Live right now.
All right, y'all. Welcome to All Politics and Local America's number one political hip hop radio talk show. Well, y'all know if it is the fourth Friday, I think that's 1, 2, 3, 4. Y'all know it is time for the disciples. So, listen, we've got a lot going on. There seems to be a lot of pushback in the country around a lot of issues. So we're gonna hopefully get some spiritual counseling on that and some wisdom from the men and women of God tonight. So we're gonna lean on them heavy tonight. And then, of course, after that, we've got a couple of things coming up. John, you want to give them the rundown? What's going to happen at 7 going forward?
Yes, I'm just working on something right now because I think that we are not on Facebook Live. There's something that went wrong with the broadcast. So we're on YouTube. We're live on that. And I'm trying to get us on Facebook right now. So I am continuing that right now. So I'm not going to give you the rundown fully. But I know that we're going to have a union leader at 7 talking about the right to unionize at work. Right? I'm sorry. Yes. We're also
Steve Tully.
Yep. And we're also going to have a 6:30 or 7:30. We're also going to have someone who is going to talk about my brother's keeper. Is going to be on
Mark Consensus.
Yep. At 8 o'clock, we're gonna be brought up on the situation in Haiti. And then we're gonna have DJ Rhino finish us out with DJ Rhino in the state of hip hop. All right, so I will continue, but I'm gonna try to figure this out right now.
They're not blocking us, are they, John?
I don't think so. I think something went wrong. I'm not sure what it is. We started on time, so it is. I'm just trying to figure it out now.
Maybe they got the topic of discussion, Brother Ed.
Maybe.
You know,
they trying to block us, ban us.
Well, one of the things Mayor Baraka said, he said they always testing the system, right?
Yes, sir.
Remember that?
Yes, sir.
You know, when we were at the mention,
cancel the show because they testing the system. They're not going to be quiet. We're not going to be quiet because just like the minister was speaking at Central that day, and they thought everybody was going to run out because the alarm went off. Just because they tested the system is not going to silence us. Come on, somebody.
Tell them about it, sister. Hey, Roundtree. And here's the thing, right? We all held fast, didn't we?
What? We didn't know.
Moved.
Yes, sir.
Everybody held fast. You know,
we didn't move.
Everyone was glued to their seats. Thank God.
Nobody moved. Yeah.
Nobody panicked at all.
That was that message.
Nobody panicked.
Well, listen, man. I'm gonna give the show to y'all, and I'll send that to John right now, so you can go on and get started, Brother Haqq.
Thank you, Brother Ed. Thank you so much, Brother Ed. Greetings to you once again. I'm Brother Abdul Haqq Muhammad, the student minister of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan for the Muhammad Mosque of Islam, number 25, which is located here in the city of Newark, New Jersey. I have once again another week, another great show, The Disciples. We thank each and every one of you in the listening audience for tuning in again. I have with me my illustrious co-host. She really needs no introduction, but the formality of it, I'll let her introduce herself.
Thank you, my brother, my son, my beloved minister, Abdul Haqq Muhammad, and to my other colleague, the pastor in the hood, Ali, my big brother. I am so honored to be on All Politics of Local, America's #1 hip-hop political radio talk show, where Ed Riley is our guy and our host. Our host is Minister Abdul Haqq Muhammad. Honored to be with these brothers. I don't know, Brother Jonathan went on to do something. I know Ed Rhino's coming on, but we got some good stuff tonight. I'm just honored to be in the company of these two young men, along with Brother Ed, just to get information out to those who are tuned in to All Politics and Local. Look, there's a message that some folks speak. They say, text, tag, and tell. Text. You always say, come on in, come on in, come on in. So if you're watching, text, tag, and tell, and let somebody know the disciples are on, and Minister Abdul is going to be on fire. I know it. Pastor Hood and the Hood going to bring that wisdom, and the sister going to bring here just to bring some balance.
Yeah.
Well, grace and peace be unto you from God our Father and the Lord Jesus Christ. This is Overseer Ali, aka the Pastor in the Hood, and that's the times are so serious right now. I mean, at the breakfast yesterday, you dropped some scriptures, Haqq, that made me go back and think and how precious it is. You know how good and pleasant it is for to gather together in unity. And I thank God for the unity that we have among each other, that we can gather again tonight. It seemed like the fourth Friday spins around so quickly. I had to check my calendar yesterday and say, oh my God, it's time to get back on tomorrow. But I'm glad to be here and to be able to have some input on such serious times, because as we compare to what's going on to scriptures, it's serious, y'all.
That's right. I beseech you, brethren, by the name of our Lord Jesus Christ, that you all speak the same thing. It says, and that there be no divisions among you, but that we be perfectly joined together in the same mind and in the same spirit. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad, as well as the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, Malcolm X, so many of our great illuminaries, they preached a message of unity. They preached the message of being progressive, being educated, being enlightened, and being in unison with one another. And we are going to continue to preach that message more so than ever. So again, Pastor Ali, as the Bible says, behold how good and how pleasant it is for brethren and sisterin to dwell together in unity. So I'm so honored to be here again with each and every one of you. On this great day. God willing, we'll have a great show. Brother Ed sent us earlier today some great topics of discussion. We know that Brother Jonathan is trying to bring up that video, but until he does, we'll go over it without the video. First topic of discussion, we're talking about Condoleezza Rice. We know that she was on The View a few days ago, and they were talking about critical race theory. So before we get into what she said specifically about that, Reverend Roundtree, Pastor Ali, would you like to talk about that? That has been a topic of discussion in the Black community, for quite some time now. In the past several weeks, they've been talking about that, teaching critical race theory in the school. How should it be taught? Should it be taught at all? Mark Lamont Hill was talking about it a few weeks ago, along with many other analysts. So, Pastor Ali, Reverend Roundtree, any thoughts on that before we get into specifically what Condoleezza Rice said? Any just general thoughts on critical race theory?
It needs to be taught, but it needs to be balanced. I think the truth needs to come out, and wherever the chips may fall. This is something that's taught in colleges, and now they want to break it down to 7 and 10-year-olds, and it's much deeper than just dumbing it down, because what went down was too serious. What occurred was too serious over time, over decades, over centuries, and we are still affected by it today. And I think too, as without getting to what Condoleezza said, I think just because the people were not there at that time, you still are. The law of first mention is based on who teaches you first. Whoever teaches you first, that's where you pick up your theory about life, your theory about race, your theory about people, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. One of my personal covering, he always talks about when he went to the University of Tennessee, he had a white roommate, and the white roommate had been taught that all Black people had a tail. And that was the Lord's first truth. And he actually thought that his roommate had a tail because he had never been raised around Black folk. And the first Black person he was around, African-American, was his roommate. And he let him know, I hated you. I didn't want to be in the room with you. And I wanted to see your tail.
So if you don't mind me asking, Pastor Ali, what allowed them to eventually come together? Okay, so Brother Jonathan has it pulled up. We don't want to go over the whole 6 minutes, but if you could just fast forward a little bit, Brother John. Yeah, right there probably is good. And we can hear what she said. We can't hear it right now, Brother John. We want to deal specifically with Sister Condoleezza Rice and her comments. I have them written down. I can go over them or quote them, but
Well, they're actually homeschooling them in increasing numbers. And I think that's a signal. First of all, parents ought to be involved in their children's
Yes, they should.
education. Their children are in school
Can you hear?
7 hours.
Yes.
That's an informative period.
Yeah, we can hear it's a little choppy
I
though.
think parents ought to have a say. We used to have parent-teacher conferences. We used to have PTAs. There are lots of ways for parents to be involved, and they should be. If I could take a moment to talk about the whole issue of critical race theory and what is and is not being taught. I come out of an academic institution, and this is something that academics debate. What is the role of race and so forth? And let me be very clear. I grew up in segregated Birmingham, Alabama. I couldn't go to a movie theater or to a restaurant with my parents. I went to segregated schools till we moved to Denver. My parents never thought I was going to grow up in a world without prejudice, but they also told me that's somebody else's problem, not yours. You're going to overcome it, and you are going to be anything you want to be. And that's the message that I think we ought to be sending to kids. One of the worries that I have about the way that we're talking about race is that it either seems so big that somehow white people now have to feel guilty for everything that happened in the past. I don't think that's very productive. Or Black people have to feel disempowered by race. I would like Black kids to be completely empowered, to know that they are beautiful in their Blackness. But in order to do that, I don't have to make white kids feel bad for being white. So somehow this is a conversation that has gone in the wrong direction.
Repeat that last part. You don't have to watch.
Yeah, there's a little bit of it in order for Black kids who, quite frankly, for a long time, the way they were portrayed, the way their history was portrayed,
Right.
it was second-class citizenship.
Of course.
But I don't have to make children feel bad about being white in order to overcome the fact that Black children were.
How does that
happen.
happen? Well, I have a couple
happens.
examples here,
Yeah,
actually.
yeah.
In Cupertino, California.
You can stop it there, brother
elementary
Jonathan.
school,
You wanted to
third
get some
graders are-
Lisa's comment. So she said, I would like to see Black kids to be completely empowered to know that they are beautiful in their Blackness. But in order to do that, I don't have to make white kids feel bad
Lord have
for
mercy.
being white. Then she said, I don't have to make white kids feel bad about being white in order to overcome the fact that Black children were, and then she was cut off there. So Reverend Roundtree, what are your thoughts on that, on her particular statement?
I'm on live with folks watching me, Minister Haqq Muhammad, and let me be very, very clear. I am a woman. I've worked with every mashed Black, white children. Children react based on what they are taught. You've often heard children not born saying they want to be a drug addict or a murderer. They emulate what they see and what they hear. No matter what your race is. We're dealing with a dual thing here. We're dealing with African Americans that are still under attack, that are still being lynched, that are still being drugged behind cars. There's still police brutality. There's still a George Floyd. We're dealing with a whole lot of things that children have to see. Then you start talking about the things that Dr. Ali just stated, about things that occurred before these babies even know. You have children that were born after Barack Obama became president. And then once President Obama became president, they had no clue what it took all of these hundreds of years to get to a Black president, because it seems normal. So what she's saying, Lord help me right now, because I don't want to be offensive, but I'm not 100% in agreement with that statement.
Brother Ed, when she
I don't think we have to make white children feel bad because they're Caucasian, nor Black children feeling less because white oh, Lord help me. You know what I'm getting ready to say, Minister Haqq Muhammad.
I do, Reverend Roundtree. It's all right. Take a deep breath. Take your time. It's okay.
I mean, we're not trying to make white children feel bad. Some things are trained. Children see how their parents act, and that's how I've seen little Black boys and little white girls as Dr. K holding hands, and this is a design. This is a design, just like some other things are designed for us to be under attack. on another level. If they can create children now, making our little young black babies feel inferior, yes, we need to teach everything. The little white babies or the little children of all races need to know what we went through. I guarantee you, Jewish children will never, ever not be trained and not know about the Holocaust. Never.
That's right.
Never. They will not let you forget what happened. They will, that culture, and on top of all of that, they try not to spend their money with nobody but each other.
That's right. That's right, Reverend Roundtree. They're
But we will make sure the Chinese children go to college buying chicken wings and fried rice. So what we teach our children, and I think it's imperative that our children learn. Now, is it going to happen? That's another story. So we can have these conversations all day long. What we think, what she said, was it right? Was it wrong? But what are we going to do? And that always ends up where I lead to. We can talk about it, have these conversations. Is somebody going to bite it and say, you know what? Let me just stay with this and be consistent and make sure that wherever I am, then make sure Newark knows that Newark children, their curriculum, their parents are schooled. But if you go up to Millburn, will you be able to do the same thing? If you go to West Orange and Livingston, can you go up there and talk to them about slavery in reality and what took place that brought us to this point? You can talk. You don't even have to go back that far. They're trying to oppress voters now, voting now. We don't have to go all the way back. So do it. But I know you asked me one little question that we don't have to make. We shouldn't be making anyone feel inferior, white or black. None of our children should be taught and treated in a way that they feel inferior as a child. And no child should be taught that they're better than another child because of their pigmentation.
Yes,
and that's
ma'am.
not the world we live in.
But if you're going to teach it, you got to teach the truth. The fact of the matter is things did occur. The fact
Of course they did.
It was painful for us. And I think Miss Rice she doesn't have children, number one. I think it was very condescending with her remarks that I was raised in segregated Alabama. My parents, I never was able to go to the movies with them.
Come on here.
And they taught me to go forward and I can be this and be
Come on, Ali.
Be taught. But the bottom line is she didn't talk about how that affected her.
Yeah. How did this exactly?
It was cool. I'm
yeah.
I'm good.
Oh, I lived in that world. That's like somebody coming on the show talking about, well, I was in a restaurant and the white waitress was very nasty to the black guy when he came in, but I just made sure I left her a nice tip. I'm just saying. I mean, so you think because you left her a nice tip, that makes it okay what the person did that came in and mistreated? So that's the way I feel about that statement. You telling us you've experienced and you lived through that, but what does that say? That's not really the answer to giving someone some information about what you really, really feel. How did it affect you? What living in a segregated, when your mother told you that, that's like us telling the people in jail, your destination does not determine, your location don't determine your destination.
But right now I'm locked up.
Come on here.
Right.
They got to first get out to be going somewhere.
Right. Well, Brother Ed, I saw you shaking your head when Condoleezza was talking. What are your thoughts on those statements she made?
What's interesting is that, when I think about that, I think about, a lot of the conversation that we all have been having with Mayor Baraka on the mayor's forum when he talks about culture being a weapon.
Yes.
Right. And so Black people have never really had that complete weapon because a lot of young Black folk have not been taught the culture properly and the history properly.
Absolutely.
Right. And that's why you have young people running around. Of course, we talked about this last week on the mayor's forum with our brother. And we talked about, as Haqq, the new, and you notice, Ali, and I'm sure Roundtree, you hear it too. There's this new saying amongst folks in the community where they talk, particularly brothers, where they like to say, "Oh, I'm doing this for the culture," right? And so that is why I think there needs to be uh, this whole re-education in terms of and I really don't want to discuss with white folk, this whole idea why critical race theory is important, right? I'm sort of like Mayor Barack on this. I really don't care what white people think about that, right?
Yeah.
I care about what we think,
What we
and I
think.
care about
That's
what
right.
we teach our children,
That's right.
right? And if they are embarrassed by the truth, well, the
So
truth
be
is
it.
they paraded right. They
So
paraded
be it.
centuries of horrors and murders and rapes on black people.
My
That
Lord.
happened, and if that's going to make white people feel bad. Well, wait a second. Black folk have never been given reparations for any of that. One of the things you learn in law school is that when a crime has been committed against someone, well, there's something called prosecution, and then after the prosecution, there's something called a settlement that happens. Well,
So-
black folk have never been given reparations, right? And white folk have never paid for the crimes that they've committed against black folks. That's never happened in America. So they won't even allow us to tell the truth about it. So my feelings is that it's interesting to hear that come out of the mouth of a black woman,
that black woman.
saying that she cares about how white people feel if they hear the truth. Well, the truth is I really don't care what kind of Lisa Rice thinks. What I care about is young black folk knowing the truth. And I believe, Brother Haqq, I believe that and y'all know this. The Bible says that the truth is what makes a man free,
Sets him
right?
free. That's right.
So the truth. So if we want to be free as black folk, then we ought to tell the truth and tell the truth wherever. White folks are worried about being embarrassed. White folks are worried about their little white children who they're lying to, because everybody wants them to believe that these people are great people. These people have never committed any crimes. Well, you may have not have done it, but your ancestors have done it.
So the sins of the parents fall on the children.
Absolutely.
So things that have happened in generations past, um, it's Minister Abdul-Haq, it's in your DNA. It's in your genes. So
Right.
so now you, as a fifth, sixth, seventh, or eighth generation, got to live through that, which means, and I'm gonna just use this hypothetically. Why are we fighting so hard for reparations if you feel so bad about how you treated us?
Right.
See,
If you really
No,
want,
see,
you know,
that's the
if
thing.
you really feel that, we really didn't mean to do that, our parents and our forefathers did that, why are we? Because the truth is, something that happened hundreds of years ago is still in the DNA of those people today.
See,
Right.
that's the problem.
And black folks are still
Reverend,
suffering.
That's the
We
problem
still hurting.
that many white people don't know their own history. They don't know the atrocities that their own ancestors have committed because no one has ever taught them. So
That's
the
right.
Bible says in Isaiah 14:21, prepare slaughter for the children for the iniquities of their fathers,
That's
that
right.
they may not rise nor possess the land. Now, I'm not advocating that any white children be slaughtered for what
Of
their
course.
ancestors did, but they should know what their ancestors did. They should know that it was Aristotle who created what they called the climate theory, which said that Greeks were more beautiful and more superior, and that blacks were ugly and more inferior because of the climate that we lived in. They should know that it was the Jewish community, rabbis, that created the Hermetic curse theory, which said that black people was the son of Noah and Ham, and that we were cursed black, and that we were destined to be slaves forever. See, they should know about Francois Bernier or Carl von Linnaeus or Johann Blumenbach and how they created quote unquote race and categorized us and assigned to us a status of inferiority because of our physical characteristics. They should know about Havelock Ellis, who
Come on, sir.
theorized
Come
that
on here.
that a woman's beauty was based on the size of her pelvis or her buttocks, and that the more narrow the pelvis or the buttocks are, the more beautiful a woman was. See, they should know about that. Timmy,
That's
Katie,
right.
Johnny, they should know that history.
That's right.
The reason
Little
why I
Peter.
believe Yeah, the reason I believe Condoleezza said what she said, because Carter G. Woodson once said that black people have been so long denied opportunities that naturally we are afraid of anything that sounds like discrimination. Even though it's not discrimination, even if it sounds like it, we are afraid of it. Because we have what they call automorphic perception, where we believe that others to be like we are. So we view them through our own lens, but we are not the same. And history teaches us that we are not the same. We are clearly different. We are clearly different. There's a distinct difference between us and them. And you say, how you know? Because I speak with the authority of history. But why is it important, imperative that white children know what happened to us and that black children know what happened to us? Because again, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said that if you don't know what was, you can't know what is.
Yes,
and
that's right.
you'll prepare for what is yet to come. So it is imperative that you know what was, so you'll know what is. And we don't know what was, nor do we know what is, and we don't know what is yet to come. So history is very important. And regardless of how it affects the hearer, it must be known. Now I do understand, Pastor Ali, that Proverbs 18:21 says death and life is in the power of the
Power of the
tongue.
tongue, they
Power of the
shall eat
tongue.
the fruit
We
thereof.
do have to be mindful of how we say a thing. We should not just be reckless and careless and negligent with the truth.
Absolutely.
But truth is the truth, and truth must never be compromised in order to satisfy someone's fancy. So the Bible says in 2 Timothy chapter 4, verse 3, that the time will come that they will not endure sound doctrine.
That's right.
But
Itching
after their
ears.
own lust shall they heap to themselves teachers having itching ears. So truth is not based on or determined by how you receive it. Truth is the truth. But we pray that it is articulated in a way that it does not hurt the hearer, but it helps the hearer. So I pray that Sister Condoleezza Rice, that her thinking would be a little bit more refined on this particular subject. But anything else?
Well, I think Whoopi wanted to get her, but they ran out of time. I think Whoopi really wanted to tag her because, she was trying to go to the break so they could come back, and Condoleezza was kind of taking over like, no, let me say this. Let me say this right now. And I think I'm still back with the theory, shouldn't have to make little white kids feel inferior. If you lay the fake facts out there, the facts will determine how a person feels. If you see somebody get shot 20 times, you don't care what your color is, you're going to have some type of feeling behind it. But the fact of the matter is that person got shot 20 times. With this critical race theory, the fact of the matter is it happened, it's real, it's history, and it needs to be taught in an educated, scholastic way, but it needs to be taught. Just because somebody's feelings make it hurt is not a reason not to teach the truth.
That's right. Truth can withstand the most intense scrutiny and does not fear investigation, but rather invites exploration. And the Honorable Elijah Muhammad have always taught us that truth hurts none but the guilty. And again, truth is the truth. Ed, you quoted it. The Bible says, you shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free.
John 8:32 said, John 8:32, then you will know the truth.
See,
then you will know the truth, and it will set you free.
Yeah, they are imprisoned by this false notion that they are better because they're white, and that mind is really satanic. And we are imprisoned by the false notion that we are less than because we're black. So again, truth has to truth has to come and bring balance to both extremes.
Absolutely,
a mind of inferiority and a mind of superiority. White folks need to know that Thomas Jefferson said, I count it therefore as a superstition only that blacks, whether originally a distinct race or made distinct by time and circumstance, are naturally inferior to the white race in both the endowments of body and mind. See, they need to know that. They need to know all of the quote unquote scientific truths that were spread from quote unquote white folks about black folks that justified them enslaving us. They need to know that. Why? So that they will never do that again. And we need to know that why. So we'll never be victimized again. So Reverend, you talked about the Jews. Their mantra is never again.
Never again.
Again. And the reason they could say never again is why? Because I'm teaching my son, I'm teaching
That's
my
right.
daughter so that they
That's
will
right.
never be victimized, or they'll never fall victim to what happened to us 40 years ago, 50 years ago. But we have to have that same mindset that we need to know what we are, from where we came, and where we're going. But you can't know again where you're going if you don't know from which you came. So history is imperatively important, and we must know it, and white folks must know it. And once we both know what happened, then maybe we can sit at a table and have an honest
Yes.
discussion about
That's right.
why it happened and why it will never happen again and why it was wrong. But you talked about us not getting reparations. Because again, white folks don't know the extent of their own history. They do not know it in terms of what was done to us and how we was
Let me ask you a question.
years. They don't really know the
Mr. Abdul,
debt. Yes, ma'am.
but let me ask you a question. Some things, we don't know how some folks end up hungry or homeless, but we want to help them get a meal and a roof. So them not knowing the extent of their history, I want to err on the side of, and I don't mean to sound cold and harsh, but the cold reality of it is, do some even care about knowing? I'm just saying. So I get what you're. I'm just because
I don't know that they don't care, Reverend Roundtree.
I mean, that's what I'm just asking you. Do you?
I don't know that they don't care more than that they are afraid. I think
afraid of what? What the outcome would be if they knew?
Because the truth about them and what they did is a direct indictment. So in their consciousness of guilt, they're always trying to ignore it or act as if it did not happen.
It did not happen.
Because you are responsible for what you know. So the more they know as it relates to what they did, then the more they're obligated to fix what they did.
Gotcha.
But if they can appeal to ignorance, well, we don't know, we didn't know that happened, then now they're not obligated to fix the wrong that they did. Now, the white folks today, no, they didn't put us in slavery, but their ancestors
absolutely
did. And Brother Ed, you know, in law, they have what is called being vicariously liable.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Even though you may have a child who's 15, who's 14, and they live under your roof and you are the parent. And if this child goes out and commit a murder or does something while he's under your roof, your jurisdiction, your tutelage, as a parent, you can be held accountable. You can be vicariously liable. And I'm saying that white folks have benefited from what their ancestors did. To our ancestors, there would not be in America, would not be railroad systems and all of these things that they benefit from had it not been for us. History has proven that, hands down, the evidence is empirical as it relates to what our ancestors did to help build this country. We built the White House. We built all of those mansions that are in the South, right here in New Jersey. It was the first constitution of New Jersey called Concessions and Agreements, written by Lord Berkeley and Carteret. The way that they elicited white Europeans from Europe to come here is that they offered them 75 to 150 acres of land for every slave that they owned. 75 to 150 acres of land for every slave that they own. So, man, if I can get that type of land for a slave, then that's going to inspire me to get more slaves. And the more slaves I come with, then the more land I have. So you didn't just get your wealth because you was judicious enough or you had so much business acumen. No, you got it by deception, thievery, and oppression. So we have a book called How White Folks Got So Rich. It was off of our backs. They can't deny that history. They can't deny it. So
our sweat labor, our sweat equity, our sweat, our blood. Oh yeah, and Dr. Ali, literally,
we built it.
Literally, the White House.
That's hypothetically, we built it. That's a fact, and these are facts that white folk don't want to deal with. These are facts. Look at the Japanese, the atom bomb. They got reparations so quickly. from that.
That's right.
And that was just one bomb. Here it is. We're talking culturally. We're talking centuries. And they still want to act like, and that's what kind of Lisa, her remark bothered me. It was like to say, we don't want to make them feel bad.
Now, let me ask y'all a question. This for the audience. Who did Condoleezza Rice work for in the White House?
It was George Bush, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I just want the people to know, because see, you got some young folk that, unless they're in the politics,
She worked
don't
for
even
both
know
of
who
them.
she was, okay? All right? And you got folks like Clarence Thomas, and I don't want to get into calling names, but you just have people that have different views. Maybe that's the way I can put it. And those views are not always in our best interest. Our best. I'm just...
Well, look how Clarence married.
Hello. And while they was out deciding whether he was going to make the bench, girlfriend was sitting on the side waiting and excited when they came in and hit this man is facing trial. What happened to his sister? And this other young lady he's married to with the lighter complexion was like only concerned about was he going to make the bench.
Well, let's look at the culture.
And that's documented. That's not no like,
That's
oh, I
not
just
documented. Let's look at the culture. Let's look at the mountains. Let's look at the commercials. If you look at commercials today, they have changed. Most of your commercials now, every couple is interracial. And let me say this, my family's interracial. So, you know, Master got in my family real good. But when you look at it, you look at the commercials. Look how they're the little. It's one commercial. The guy got Crohn's disease. He's raising a little black girl like the black father is exempt. If you notice, most of the commercials, the black man is nowhere in it.
Right.
It's like
Yes,
they
sir.
Xing us out right now. So here it is. This father, white father, he's feel like he's failing his child because he's sick. What does he take her to get? Ice cream. He takes her to look at a bike that he doesn't buy her.
right.
He walks down the street holding her hand, and he picks her up at school.
Well, again, you know, he who controls the imagery controls the psyche. And he who gives you the diameter of your knowledge prescribes the circumference of your activity.
And that's why we're in such serious trouble.
Yeah.
Hello?
So now we're talking about this critical race theory and young white children feeling guilty because of what their ancestors did. Again, death and life are in the power of the tongue. And truth is not meant to hurt, but truth is meant to elevate us. It's meant to refine us. It's meant to make us better. Does it hurt? Yes, it hurts. Truth scripturally is likened unto a sword, because there's a cancer oftentimes of falsehood that's in our mind, that's in our heart, and it needs to be cut out. And truth is designed to do that. Again, I can't dictate or determine how you're going to respond to the truth, Brother Ed, or you, Brother Ali, or you, Sister Roundtree, but I'm duty bound and I'm obligated to give you the truth. Why? Because we are in a universe built on truth. The very word universe. Uni means one, and the etymological root of the word verse means truth. So we are created in the universe of truth. So naturally, falsehood is against our very nature. And we've been taught falsehood about who we are, what we are, and that has produced within us an inferiority complex. And a lot of the violence that we do to one another is based on the lies that we've been told about who we are, where we came from, and what we are. So it's truth that's going to elevate our consciousness, that's going to elevate our psyche, and the truth about us that's going to produce that love for each other. So we don't got to teach truth to make white folks hate themselves. Truth bear witness to itself. So if we give you the truth and it hurts you, I hope it hurts you to make you better. I hope it hurts you so that you won't do what your ancestors did. So, you know, that's my take on
Even
that,
open your
brother.
eyes up, even if it doesn't emotionally affect you. Open your eyes up to do something different. Insanity is expecting to do the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. So if you do something different, when you know better, you ought to do better. If you do better, then you'll get better.
Yes.
That's right.
Yes.
That's right. That's right. So, you know, praise be to God. But again, we had another topic of discussion. Marilyn Mosby, Brother Ed sent it to us. Baltimore prosecutor being criminally investigated because of her progressive policies around not locking young black men up, but helping them to find a job, not locking them up for low-level crimes, but instead helping them to find a job. So again, she's being targeted. Her supporters feel like this is politically motivated. They're asking Joe Biden, to be an advocate to help drop those particular charges. Again, she's very progressive. Like we have a very progressive mayor in our city. We have very progressive council people and politicians. So she's very progressive, but again, she's being attacked because of her progressive stance. So what are your thoughts on that, Reverend Roundtree, Pastor Ali?
Well, Ali,
I think it's very challenging that they would come after the sister because she's the mayor. Her husband is the head of the city council. Here it is. She's trying to do something to break that prison, that from third
prison
grade
pipeline,
so to speak. And she's trying to give brothers just like a probationary term. Okay, instead of me locking up, instead of me putting you in some type of program,
PTI.
I'm going to get a job. I mean, what's wrong with that? It's because she's trying to break and you understand that prison is big money. She's trying to break that back. So now they're going in her background. They're trying to say, well, let's look at her donations to churches. And that's what caught my eye.
Yep.
Because, when they start looking at donations, the first thing they want to do is see your charitable giving.
Yep.
And see, because most churches are 501c3s and don't pay taxes and stuff like that, if they think they can backdoor into your finances, they will. Now here it is, I think between her and her husband, they only make $300,000 between the both of them. And you coming after them for $300,000, which in the bigger scheme of money, I mean, that's what they make legally.
So watch this. They had no other backdoor to come in because of her affiliation with the faith base. If it had been some other entity that would have been on the front, they would have been like, God, but that's not her life. And what she's doing because of her faith experience and because of who she is doing what really we all trying to do here. Minister Abdul, you don't go to the prisons and you don't go into the youth house to talk to these guys and say, okay, we're going to make sure you finish out your 10 years. So when you come out, we're going to help you get a job. You go in there trying to be proactive and say, let me work on your mind now while you're in here. So when you come out, you already got a path. She's dealing with it in the way that we're trying to deal with it. And I'm just beginning to wonder, Donna, the truth is, do you really want us to help these people? When you start attacking those who are trying to do it, now you're going to come to see what her relationship is because the faith community backed this woman and they're with what she's doing. Listen, the truth is the prosecutors don't make no money off of what's going on with these jails. Lawyers make them keeping them in and keeping them out or whatever job they're doing with the prosecutors. But the truth is the money is in the hotel stay. I don't want to call no hotel. I'm going to say the motel because there ain't no hotels. That's where the money is. It's in how long they going to stay, how much money you going to spend on the food, how much money. And it's a business. But the real business should be trying to see what we can do to help these individuals. So I'm in 1,000 support of what the sister's doing. And whoever coming after her, I just want to hear a man's perspective before I open my mouth. Because I'm always err on the side of a sister who's doing something progressive to help the community, to try to do what we can to help our brothers. Because if they keeping them locked up, what's going to happen is the girls coming out of Howard and Spelman, they're going to have no one to pick from because they're all going to be over there, them other places. Okay.
And Minister Haqq, and I would say, and Mayor Mosby should do exactly what they're doing. They should follow the money because correctional, the money that goes into the correctional system and the privatization, and see how many of those elected officials are invested in that private
That's
prison.
what they should be looking at.
And but also, this is nothing new. I'm prior military, and that was something that they did when I was in the military, that it was an alternative that either you can go to the military or you can go to jail. And that was, back in the 80s when I was in the military. So this is not nothing this is nothing new. They've been doing that for a long time. Now that she's doing it, it's a problem, or it's being done in our communities. Because one of the things I can remember being in the military, and some, and they would go around the room and they ask, why did you join the Air Force? And some people said I joined because I had the choice of going to jail or going to the military. And as a result of hearing that, I wrote my municipal judge at the time was Judge Freddie Pohill. And I was like, Judge Pohill, do you know in such and such town, they're giving people an alternative? Are we doing that here in Orange, New Jersey? So no, it's been going on for a long time. So kudos to her.
Yes.
But what is it's a something corporation, the Correctional Corporation of America, CCCA. Let's follow that money and see how many elected officials have put some money into the privatization of the prison system.
They're pursuing her for a form that they can't find. They can't produce. What are you charging me with? Where is the form? That's the kicker. You investigate me on a form that you cannot produce.
On some blank, wait a minute. It's like a blank piece of paper, right? With nothing on it.
Let me say
it's like during my crack days, I stood in New York and said selling nothing for $1.
we always gotta I think that we always have to look at these things again from a historical context. And when we was in subjugation and when we was in slavery, all Black people were not enslaved. There always was a certain segment of free Black people. And, politically, our slave masters, they never wanted the free Blacks to be connected to those that were still enslaved.
Still in slavery.
So they put laws on the books and they put codes to punish the free Black men and women for even entertaining our brothers and sisters who still were, quote unquote, in subjugation and still in slavery. So they had a law called the law of inveighing. And inveighing was a law which said that if you, as a free Black person, if you inspired or said anything that would inspire those that were still in the plantation to want to get free, then you would be punished. Maybe you went to jail, or maybe you were fined, or maybe you were sold back into slavery. And this all was a scare tactic to scare you. There were many Gabriel Prof, Denmark Vesey. All of us were not slaves. And as it was then, so it is today. Because they never want our brothers and sisters who have made it out of the slop trough, who maybe have got a certain degree of education. They never want them to connect with our brothers and sisters who's still in the street, who's still in the slums. And our sister Mosley is a prosecutor. So she have gained certain knowledge. She have gained certain insight that she can share and help our young brothers in Maryland, in Baltimore. But again, as they did with Paul Robeson, as they did with Marcus Garvey, they always trying to get them on these trumped up charges. We saw what they did with Paul Robeson and Marcus Garvey, where he was deported. You understand? But because we have more love for our enemy and our oppressor, we were more prone to believe them. And it was not until years later, recently, I think they were asking Obama to exonerate Garvey for those trumped up charges. They tried to do it with Malcolm X, Elijah Muhammad. So what we see happening with Mosley is nothing new. I mean, we can even look at Bill Cosby. There's a whole litany of Black men and Black women who were freedom fighters, who were trying to do the right thing by Black folks, but those in power, they always wanted to try to corrupt those who were trying to free the less fortunate of our people. They're even doing it with our mayor here in the city of Newark, New Jersey. So again, we always have to look at these things from a historical perspective and a historical context. But when you talk about the state of Maryland, looking at the statistics, they say that in Maryland, although Black men only make up 15% of the population, they account for 82% of the homicide victims. They say that Black men in Maryland between the ages of 18 and 24 are 38 more times likely to be killed or shot with a gun than white men of the same age. So when you look at these dismal numbers where young black men are concerned and you see what our sisters doing, I'm not going to ask why they're doing this. We know why they're doing this. We have the history on them. They deal with accusation and innuendo. And because we don't have enough love for ourselves, based on the skin color of the person that stands in front of that screen and say what they say, we're more prone to believe them. And a lot of times it's not until years later that we go back and we say, man, I was a good brother. That was a good sister. Hell, they did it to Jesus. So why do we think that we're going to be absolved of being lied on, being accused?
That's right. That's right.
Scorned. But Jesus said, blessed are you when men shall revile you and say all manner of evil against you for my sake. So our enemy has always dealt with accusation and innuendo as it relates to those of us who are really trying to help our people. Hell, they doing it with my leader and teacher. They've always done it, Brother Ed, you know. So again, we have to form a hedge around our sister. You understand? And not believe the hype, but talk to our sister and ask her, listen, because she belonged to us. She don't belong to you.
That's right.
And just like they protect theirs, we have to protect ours. I remember when the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan was talking at what's the brother in D.C. Who was the mayor?
Marion Barry.
Marion Barry.
Yeah, and he said, yeah, you accused him. But he said, you hid the dirt of your presidents.
Come on here.
Clinton. But ours, you want to put us on Front Street. And then we take it as a people again because of our self-hate. Yeah, crucify that nigga. Isn't that what they did to Jesus? Instead of protecting our own.
That's right.
So we just got to learn the lessons of history, brothers and sisters. I don't mean to be long-winded, but we should be used to this now. And any black person that want to get in leadership and really want to help your people, this is the cross that you're going to have to bear. Don't think that it's going to be an easy road. When you really trying to help the poor man in the mud, you're going to be ridiculed. You're going to be mocked. You're going to be lied on. Pastor Ali, the book of Revelation says that they accused Jesus before the throne, what, night and day?
Yes.
Because the devil deals with accusation and innuendo.
Yes.
That's all this is with our sisters, just accusation.
Yes.
They don't have any real actual facts as it relates to what she did and what she hasn't done.
Come on here.
They see her being a voice for the poor, a voice for the voiceless. And those
But the devil is an accuser of the brethren.
They've never liked that. So we not gonna take that worm. No, we gonna spit that back up, spit it out, and we gonna continue to support and rally around our sister. You know.
But what the enemy try to work for evil, it's gonna turn around and work for good, just like Joseph.
That's right. That's right.
You know, many times God puts people in position when he's been brutalized by his own family, to put him in position to help those that didn't realize they would need him later on.
That's right. That's right. So, perhaps, Reverend Roundtree, could we close out debriefing about the successful prayer breakfast that we had yesterday?
Yeah.
Brother Ali was there. I seen him there. Look,
I came off here for a minute to do something, and then just left. Oh, there you go. Okay. Can you guys see me?
Yeah.
All right, I was doing something else. I was preparing for the event tomorrow. Listen, I am so excited. Yesterday, we had over 650, 670 was the final number. Individuals, of course, we checked for vaccines. Had to turn some individuals on the phone. We weren't able to have everyone. The last interfaith breakfast we had, there were over 900 people in the room. When I tell you yesterday was a true spiritual display of love and unity, which is our theme, it really was. I want to thank you, Minister Abdul Haqq, of course, Pastor in the Hood, Ali, and all of the faith leaders that came out to make it what it was. Minister Haqq, you often hear me saying, Pastor Ali, that we talk about the Quran and we talk about the Bible. You just finished talking about Jesus and what the atrocities, the things that Jesus went through. And trust me, we all know based on what we have read and the experiences that nobody was running to be a Christian when Jesus was on his way to the world. Nobody said, come here, man, I got you. Matter of fact, his true friends turned their back on him. And the same with the Muslim community. In the Quran, you will find so many similarities between man and God and what was inspired by God. So the whole thing, Minister Abdul Haqq and Pastor Ali, you know that I stand on this premise, and that's why I believe God blesses what we do. And I don't say what I do because it's not me alone. If nobody showed up, you know, breakfast. If nobody showed up to a meeting, I'd have nothing to talk to anybody about. So it's not just me. God is using me to do some things. And one of those messages, and I keep saying it, don't tell me about the word and the God you serve is a God of love. But when my Muslim brother comes and stands by me, I can't pray for him. Or we can't hold hands. Don't tell me as a Christian you follow Christ's teachings. But then when one of the imams walk in, you go to the other side of the room because your belief might differentiate from what this faith leader is. We all that say we were called. Some folks just got up and went, but those who were called, those individuals in their heart, and we're not a perfect people, but I believe that it's successful because from the head is not me. God directs and leads everything that this young lady does, and she does not do it alone. This woman of God is not by herself. She don't stand alone. And watch it. While we're talking about critical race theory and all these things, there's some critical religious theories too. Okay? And there's some folks that don't agree, and that's okay. But I stand on this one premise. Before there was Islam and before there was Christianity, there was God. So while you're saying all of these things, and while you got all these theories, and while you think, just follow what you're going to follow. And at the end, Brother Ed, God will deal with you, not me. I ain't got no heaven to invite you into and no hell to keep you out of.
That's right.
You know, so the breakfast was phenomenal.
You
and
held my
the
breakfast
mayor
up.
came up and preached his sermon. My Lord, my Lord.
But that wasn't the highlight, Roundtree. The highlight
and that's
for me was the release of the woman.
Which one? Because it was about 5 of them.
I'm talking about, when I talk about the women, I'm talking about collectively.
Oh, well, that was the purpose. Do you know what this year is? Number 8. This is the 8th prayer breakfast. You know what that is? New beginnings. This is the 8th prayer breakfast we've done. Number 8 symbolizes new beginnings. Let me be very clear. While we're talking about new beginnings, this is the first year that I had a woman come. And then I would get a woman that was the first African-American to lead a seminary that has never been led by a woman or a black one for sure. Of course, we had an African-American man, Dr. Howard. He was the president they had set back in the day when my pastor got his doctorate. But there's been no woman. So God said, get a woman this year.
But you can have women. You had women praying.
Right, because that was the setup. Didn't I tell you God made this, not me?
Look. The man got happy off a song.
But see, that was God too. Because I can't bring nobody singing unless they sing it right. Before the mayor speak, it's all a setup. You got to let God be. Well, you ain't God gonna be God no matter what you do. But you must be obedient. That's the word I'm looking for. Obedient to the Spirit. When you try to do your stuff and plan stuff, you often hear people say, when you plan, God laughs at you.
That's right.
If he had danced, it would have been over.
You know what, Reverend Roundtree, you started to say it.
Donna, I'm sorry. Before you go to the Donna, we got 2 minutes left. We got to wrap this up. So if you could just have a
You gonna talk about the men's meeting?
Okay, go ahead.
The city?
Go ahead.
Well, I just want to know, can anybody go back and see the prayer breakfast? Is it videotape where they can go back and see it? Okay.
Yes, you can go back on the City of Newark Facebook page and see it.
Okay.
But I don't want to miss out on letting people know they can call City Hall. I don't have the number in front of me, but the mayor will be delivering his state of the city on October 26th, this Tuesday at 7 p.m. Please call 973-733-6400, or I will give my, let me give that number for now, because 973-733-6400, which is the mayor's main line. And then on the 28th, now I know Minister Abdul Haqq got a piece of this. That men's meeting don't happen unless the brothers on the scene. Come on here, inspiring men and women. Come on, you might want to talk about that's happening October 28th if I'm not mistaken, at
Yes, 6 o'clock.
Central High School, 6 o'clock. And tomorrow, yes, tomorrow there is a walk for domestic fashion. There's a fashion show happening at Central Hall at 5 o'clock. I believe it's Walk for Domestic Violence. It's a fashion show. And I'm not looking at the flyer, but I'm telling you, there's no cost, and it's going to be off the chain at 5 tomorrow. Some of us are going to be at the rally. Some of us are going to be at the park. But just like the mayor said the other day, we blame hunger and homelessness on God. No, he didn't say that. Dr. Waldron said that. She said we want to blame everything on God. Hunger. The mayor talked about the women bringing everything forth. But Dr. Waldron said we blame hunger and homelessness on God when there's enough food in this world to feed everybody and enough wood and everything else to build houses for everybody. So if we can just get our minds right, Lord have mercy. Okay, we gotta
go. That's Ali. Thank you, brother.
Donna, help me.
What?
Thank you to the Donna. Reverand moves us out. Thank you so much. Love you all.
But Minister Haqq, before you leave, I don't know if y'all know Sister Jean Lowry from People's Organization for Progress, but she has gone on to glory. So please keep the family of Jean Lowry and People's Organization for Progress. Sister Jean was one of our elders, but she was she was out there running with the best of us, and so she just went on to glory.
Brother Ed, you know what you're talking about?
No.
I will send a picture. I'll send it out to the group. I'll send her out to the group.
Please.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Brother Ed.
Welcome.
Thank you, Sister Donna, Pastor Ali.
Thank y'all.
Peace.
Thank you, Minister Haqq. Thank you, Brother Ed, Brother Jonathan. Peace.
All right, there. See y'all later.
I'll see y'all later.
There it is. That's the disciples, y'all. You was on fire tonight.
Yes.
You know?
Always is.
And y'all know once y'all get Roundtree started, we talk about Donna. Don't get Roundtree started, you know. And then
Donna, sister love. That's Donna, that sister love.
Donna, you ought to know better than to ask a final question.
That's that sister love.
We out of time.
But look, Minister Haqq kept me in check. Nope, that's Sister Donna. I'm gonna get him. Yeah. I'm gonna give Minister Haqq. Like, nope, Donna.
After I said what a great job you did last week, you're gonna ask. Oh,
knock it off!
Wow.
I have to redeem myself. That's right. Hey, brother Steve, how you doing?
How are you? We are getting ready to head to the next part of our show of All Politics Are Local, America's number one political hip hop radio talk show. We have the pleasure of tonight having Steve Tully on, the executive director of the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees. Donna, if you want to give an introduction to our guest, and then I'll give an introduction to the topic.
Okay, well, I will tell you this. I won't give a Zaid introduction, but I believe if you looked up labor relations or labor in Webster's dictionary, I believe you'll see a picture of Steve Tully next to it. He is the epitome of labor. He has a passion for labor. If you had the opportunity to sit at the table on behalf of labor, you want Steve Tully by your side. He is a wealth of information. He is like he has all these contracts in his brain, and he knows what to ask for, how to ask for, and how to get it done. So I've met Steve as an employee of Superior Court. He was our business rep back then, and he brought me in as a shop steward, and he taught me and made sure I learned to love labor and the importance of reading your contract. You know, I can't say enough. I talk to people all the time that are represented by labor, and I ask them, what union do you belong to? And they be like, I'm not sure. And they pay dues every week or every other week. And it just amazes me how sometimes people are unengaged. And if it had not been for labor, you would not have something as simple as a weekend. You know, you would not have a 35 or 40-hour week. So Steve Tully is a representative of labor. He represents AFSCME right now. And again, I'm coming from a very personal place because I've had the opportunity of working with him and learn to love labor by working with Steve Tully. So welcome, Steve.
Thank you, Donna.
And welcome. We're glad to have you on. I'm a debate coach. I'm a high school debate coach at Science Park High School, and what our conversation actually is going to be of interest to debaters all over the United States. One of the reason why I really wanted to have on and talk to you about this topic is the topic that we're talking about is being debated by high school kids all over the country in the months of November and December. And the topic that's being debated is a just government ought to recognize an unconditional right of workers to strike. A just government ought to recognize the unconditional right of workers to strike. So can you give me something like this? And so this interview is, yes, to find out information about labor and unions, but it's also an educational point for students to really understand what labor and labor movements are about. Based on your experience, based on your work as a labor leader, why is the right to strike so incredibly important? And why should that right be unconditional?
Well, first off, I want to thank you for having me on tonight, and I want to thank Donna for that wonderful introduction. In fact, I'm gonna start asking Donna to do all my introductions because that was the best introduction I think that I've ever had, and I loved it. Look, I think that when you are talking about workers and the power that workers have, all of it rests with their ability and their willingness to do the job, right? Workers' greatest strength is that they actually produce, they work hard every day, and they produce for people who make a lot of money off the backs of workers. But workers expect in exchange for that, in exchange for doing a hard day's work for fair pay, they expect to be treated fairly. And I'd like to say that happens all the time. I'd like to say that that's a given, and we live in a world where if you do the right thing, others will do the right thing by you. But that would be a lie if I told you that happened. In fact, I would argue that is the exception rather than the rule. And the only thing that workers really have to exercise their strength, to fight back, is if they can withhold their labor. That's about it. There are strikes going on all over the country right now. In 2021 alone, there have been 185 strikes and counting in 255 locations across the country. Just in October alone, there's 40 strikes. And I think that, we're at a place now where workers are getting fed up. They're getting fed up with the fact that they've been exploited for years. This pandemic really kind of highlighted just how essential everyday workers are. And, one thing this pandemic did, by the way, was show who's essential and who's not essential. So workers, it's important that they have the right to not only bargain together, but to withhold their labor if necessary, because otherwise an employer can just run rampant over them.
Now, what is the difference between having a right to strike and just the ability to strike? Because it seems like throughout, labor history, the right to strike may be pretty recent. And with the particular union that you represent, like public workers, we don't necessarily, like I'm a teacher, we don't necessarily have the right to strike.
That's correct.
So what is it that we get with a right to strike that we don't get without it, right?
Well, first off, you could break workers down into two pretty distinct subsets. One is public employees like yourself and the vast majority of our members, and private sector employees. In the private sector, all workers are governed by the National Labor Relations Act, which grants workers the right to strike. So any of these private sector workers that you see, through contract talks, they have the right to strike. It's a right that's guaranteed under the law. Public employees are different because the National Labor Relations Act covers all 50 states and the District of Columbia, right? So everybody in the country goes by the same rules in the private sector with their right to strike. The public sector is different. The public sector, each state sets their own rules as to whether they can strike or not. I think right now there are only 11 states in which public employees can strike. New Jersey is not one of them. So first and foremost, what gives employees the right to strike is whether they are, what the law says. And again, if you're private sector, everybody has the right to strike. If you're public sector, it depends on your state. And there's 11 out of 50 states in which you can strike now.
But just because we don't have the right to strike doesn't mean that we don't do it, right? Like there was a famous teacher strike in Newark. There were public teacher strikes in West Virginia. There are public employee strikes or strikes that are considered, quote, illegal that happen. What is the difference between, like, what does a right to strike give you that not having the right to strike doesn't give you? Like, why is that right important?
Well, it's important because, let me give you an example. You brought up the Newark teachers strike, but more recently, the Jersey City teachers went on strike in 2018. And technically it was an illegal strike, right? So the school district goes to the court and they ask for an injunction, at which point the judge, I think they issued an injunction, but it didn't come to enforcing it. But the judge issues an injunction and the union has to call an end to the strike. Because the reason for the injunction is that New Jersey law doesn't allow for public employees and those teachers to strike. However, just because you don't have the right to strike under the law doesn't mean that you will see people not striking, right? You certainly could have a strike even if it's prohibited by law. What though could happen is that a court could go to try and fine the union or fine membership, if they struck illegally. But I do just want to mention one thing, because it's a very important point that you bring up. What the law says and what the law should be very often are two different things. Some of the greatest improvements, some of the greatest strides in our society were initially illegal. Right? I mean, there are things that were against the law that people felt were unjust, and they went out and they fought to overturn those things. They didn't always do it by going to court. They didn't always do it by elections. They did it by action. They did it by having the will. And that's a very important, very, very important thing to remember. The will to fight against something that is unjust, whether it is legal or not.
Could it be argued that the unions were the strongest before they had the actual right to strike? Like, it seems like the labor movement that was able to actually garner a right to strike and garner changes in labor law, it seems like those movements were massive. Could you give us some background, like just like what unions were like before the right to strike, and what some of those things, and what was the difference that was made after the right to strike?
Well, the way that unions kind of came into being. I mean, labor is a very, very has a very lengthy history, and it was a long struggle. You will read about actions and strikes going back to like the late 1890s and into the early 1900s. But where it really changed for labor was in the 1930s, where there was a lot of worker action. There were a tremendous amount of gains that were made by workers, including getting the National Labor Relations Act passed, that were made when they didn't have the right to strike. They were, the gains that were made were because those workers had had enough. And it wasn't, it was whole industries. It was the steel industry. It was mine workers. It was the United Auto Workers. These whole groups of workers had enough, and they were fighting. By the way, the right to strike came under with the National Labor Relations Act, and really came to the fore in the 1930s. But what was at the core of it was the right to bargain, the right to get to the bargaining table in the first place and be recognized as a union. So I think you could make the argument that that certainly there were tremendous gains that had been made prior to unions prior to the National Labor Relations Act. In fact, there wouldn't have been a National Labor Relations Act, I don't think, if not for workers being fed up and taking action on their own. So I think you could make that argument, but strikes are not a common thing either, and they're not a game. I think what we've seen, what's interesting to me where we are in this point in history, is that when I first started in the labor movement, it was 1992. Now, one of my first memories of organized labor was when Ronald Reagan fired the air traffic controllers in 1981. And that's like a chill. I mean, a chill across the whole labor movement. And it really, I think, just kind of, it flipped the table and really took labor's power away. What you're seeing now, though, right? I mean, you're seeing that, oddly enough, while union membership declined and has declined from that period in the early 80s up to the present time, particularly in the private sector, you're now seeing more action, right? You're seeing, right now you have 10,000 workers at John Deere on strike. You have 1,400 workers at Kellogg's. Kaiser Permanente out on the West Coast right now is facing a strike at the end of this month of 40,000 workers, many of whom are AFSCME. So oddly enough, as the number of organized workers went down, or represented workers went down, and conditions got worse, it's led to this resurgence in activism. So I think that there's certainly at the end of the day, it's activism, and it's people having enough.
But let me just give you another view of labor. Let me take you back to the 70s, maybe late 70s, John. Just think about when the Jeffersons and Good Times and all of those shows was out, and families were in front of their TV, and it was like 8 o'clock prime time, and you're sitting there, and then it goes for a commercial break, and all of a sudden you see this commercial that comes on that says, "Look for the union label when you are buying." That's labor. It came prime time right into and that's a song that everybody that probably grew up in my generation can probably sing that whole song if it had to come from beginning to end. That was labor in action. You think about it now, and then you fast forward to today. COVID, I believe, has given workers a new voice, because now we realize our value, and the workers and the employers realize the value. We're working from home. We can state, well, perhaps we don't have to go into office. I can remember trying to get administrative people to be able to work at home. Management has always been able to work from home, but the workers, the clerical workers, it was unheard of. But guess what? That's probably, Steve, when you go to the table right now, it's probably going to be a lot easier for you to bargain these issues now because of the conditions that just happened because of COVID. So there are different things that I believe that there are different actions that happen and that helps labor. And just sometimes, like Steve just mentioned, what Ronald Reagan did with the layoffs and things like that. But labor is very, very important. I think, and Steve, maybe you can speak to this more, it's us realizing our voice and the importance of knowing that when we come together, how important the word collective bargaining is and what it means.
Yeah, I think that's a that's at the core of it, right? That you have to consistently educate members. You have to consistently educate, that the way you get things like improved wages, health benefits, pensions, is because workers came together. I do think that, Donna, you mentioned about it being easier to bargain with employers. I think what's easier is that workers are fed up. I think you're right about that with the pandemic, that it's really been like an awakening, where workers have said, whether it's in their current jobs or I'm not rushing to go back to some job that doesn't pay me a whole lot of money and that I don't really like. It's what's easier now is communicating the message to the members that they're open to something that is different to them in banding together. You got to remember, even where you have a union that's been in existence for decades, right? You got to remember, the people who formed the union remember what it was like when they didn't have a union. They remember why they organized, because it wasn't a good place to work. They weren't treated fairly. They didn't have good pay. They didn't have good benefits. But as you go through time, those workers start, then, now they're there 10 years, 20 years, 25 years, and they move on and new people come in the door. And the new people coming in the door kind of think like it's the employer that gave them all these things. And they don't know the struggles that went on, and they don't know how we got here. Now, I think an argument could be made, and I think it's a fair argument, that that's on us in labor for not educating the workers, for not explaining to people coming in the door that what you have now is because of the people who made sacrifices and fought before you. And if you don't stick together, it can be taken away. So I think, though, Donna, that I will say, I think that the message of how important it is and how beneficial it can be for working people to stick together, I think it's more, people are more responsive to it now than probably at any time in my career.
And if there is this sticking together, if there is like this actual solidarity, is the official recognition of this right, is that important?
I'm sorry, is the official recognition?
Right. It seems like if there is solidarity, if there is like people actually sticking together, then is a official state recognition of a right to strike important?
Well,
like what can the government do to you if you don't have a right to strike that it can't do to you if you do have a right to strike? Like how does the right to strike protect the worker?
Well, the right to
wouldn't do.
Yeah, no, the right to strike protects you from like sanctions from the court. It protects the union from sanctions from the court in an illegal versus what would be considered a legal strike. But what it does do, Jonathan, which is a good point, if workers stick together, you don't need to strike. Sometimes it's the threat of a strike. Sometimes it is things can get done if you are threatening the management, the business, whoever it is, from accomplishing what they want. And if workers stick together and they can't get done what they want, they will fold. They really will, legal or not. I'll give you an example that we talked about, Newark teachers strike and the Jersey City teachers strike. And I'm more familiar with the Jersey City one because we represented custodians and school bus drivers in Jersey City during that strike. And what settled that strike was the fact that the teachers went out on strike and weren't going to come back to school. They went out on a Friday. They weren't going to come back Monday, and they didn't care what the court said. Now, what happens is that the parents are upset because what are they going to do with their kids during school, right? Well, how are you going to educate the kids? It puts the pressure on the district, on the administration. And that technically was not legal, but it got the job done. They got a fair contract because they stuck together and they threatened and completely disrupted the school district. Even for that little snippet of time, they were able to get their message across.
So it really is so when you're looking at this concept of rights and strikes and labor kind of exists because it's unified. When it's not unified, they fail. How does that deal with the air traffic control strike in 1981? Was that just about not having the right to strike so we could fire them? Would having a right to strike made a difference there? That was I was just a little kid then, right? Like I wasn't old enough to vote or barely understood the news was going on then. But that was I understood then that was a news story and that was significant. And years later, people keep referring back to that as making Reagan very popular and really crippling the American labor movement. Like that's always seen, or many people, including you tonight, have looked at that as being a pivotal moment in American labor. They didn't have a right to strike because they were public employees. If they had a right to strike, would that have made a difference?
Well, it could have, because he wouldn't have been able to fire them like he did. What sent the chill across not just labor, but I think across the country to all working people was if Reagan just went out and said, I'm going to fire everybody here. Now all of a sudden, there's a huge risk now, right? Because people look at that and they say, oh, that's unfair. That's not right. Maybe he shouldn't have done that, but I don't want to become those people. I'm not willing to take that risk. And that was something that was done, and it wasn't fair. But you are correct that changed. That really turned the table over, and really set unions back a long, long time. So the difference would have been if they had the right to strike, he wouldn't have been able to fire them. Just like that, they would have had a fighting chance. I think that might have been different with respect to that, but that's tough to tell 40 years later.
Wow. Okay. No, that's good in terms of the way that you went over that, and also the chill that it put through people's heads. Why can't other businesses react the same way? Like, what is there to keep? And I know we are running out of time, so we could actually just end on this.
Sure.
What is there that prevents other employers from doing what Reagan did?
Well, if they're private sector employers, the right to strike is, that's guaranteed under the National Labor Relations Act. So in those cases, if employers were to, private sector employers were to seek to do that, they couldn't do the same exact thing that Reagan did, right? They wouldn't have that ability to do that. Secondly, the other thing I would argue with that is Ronald Reagan was the president of the United States. He had he had so many resources at his disposal to kind of deal with the fallout of firing air traffic controllers, because right at the end of the day, somebody's got to do the job.
Right.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
You can't shut down commerce and shut down air traffic across the country. And Reagan had the resources and the wherewithal to kind of quickly replace them. A small business, I don't know that they would have the ability to kind of just get rid of people and change on a dime like that. And the reason that's important is because employers, at the end of the day, they will fight as hard as they can. They want control. It's always about control. It's always about doing things the way they want, when they want. But they also are in business. And if it hurts business and they can't get their job done and get what they need to get done and make money the way they want to, they're not going to just fire people on at the drop of a hat like that.
Okay. No, thank you so much, and very much appreciate you being on. It's very informative, and you informed not just our audience, but I think you may have informed a lot of kids who are going to go back and look at this and see and get some more information about labor. And I think it is important that we really introduce people into what labor is and why labor is important. So thank you. We have one last question. Donna, do you want to ask that?
Yes, so this is a hip hop political show, Steve.
Okay.
And what we do is we ask all of our guests that come on, what hip hop artists and or group are you listening to? Do you listen to?
What hip hop? I don't really listen to. I like songs, but I don't really.
Who's your favorite? Yes,
Who's your favorite?
song, favorite artist?
Artist, yes. Song or artist, yes. I'm sorry about that.
I like. You caught me off guard with this. I got to check my.
It's all right. It's all right. It's
No,
all right.
I like. I like Puff Daddy. I like the.
Okay.
I mean, there's. I'm more of like the '90s.
Okay.
Right?
We all are.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
But no, that's good stuff.
Okay,
so
cool.
that's it. Well, keep us, and if there's anything that you want us to know, or you feel that there's something that you could use our platform to come back, just send me a text. And I know labor, sometimes you need to get the word out. And I know there's an election coming up, and that's very important. And elections have consequences, and we want to, and you can have the last word. Just make sure that people get out and vote. Is there anything that you want to say in the last word in terms of the election coming up?
Yeah, get out to vote and understand that while you may not like politics, while you may get frustrated with politics, politics matters. And every decision, every facet of your life is affected by who is elected, whether that is the state, county, municipal, or the federal government. All of it impacts you, whether you like it or not. So you're a fool if you don't pay attention and you don't vote.
That's right.
All right. Well, thanks. Thank you so much, and glad you're having her on. Definitely want to have you back, Donna.
And
Absolutely.
Steve, you're starting to look like Pat now.
I know.
You're looking like your dad these days. So
Every
great.
single day.
Yeah. So great seeing you, and we will connect again soon.
Great.
Thank you very much. Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks
Take
for
care.
having me.
Okay.
Take care.
Hey, so that was another segment of All Politics Are Local, America's number one, the political hip hop radio talk show. We are honored tonight to have with us for the first time the executive director of My Brother's Keeper, Mark Comesanas. Am I saying your name correctly?
That was pretty good. The N has actually a tilde, so it's Comesanas.
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 Yes.
Comesanas. Okay.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on All Politics Are Local. A lot of people don't know that My Brother's Keeper is also in Newark, and you do a lot of really good work with not only with My Brother's Keeper, but there's another organization that you work with that is very much involved with helping out young Black people and young Black males. So, welcome to All Politics Are Local. And what's going on? What is it that why is My Brother's Keeper important? And what does it do? What is it doing for the city now?
So first of all, thank you for having me. It's an honor to be able to speak on behalf of just men of color in the city, and some of the work we've been doing at My Brother's Keeper Newark, and the other organization that you referenced, the Opportunity Youth Network, Newark Opportunity Youth Network. What I'll do is I'll start first with the Newark Opportunity Youth Network, and so the Opportunity Youth Network is a citywide strategy designed to serve what we call opportunity youth. These are young people between the ages of 16 and 24 who are out of school and or work. And it's what in the past or for years was called disconnected youth or at-risk youth. But we believe that they are one of the greatest assets, untapped assets and resources in our community. In Newark specifically, prior to the pandemic, the number of opportunity youth was projected somewhere in the range of as low as 4,000, as high as 7,000 young people. And that was pre-pandemic numbers. And so when we think about the lost opportunity that exists when you're talking about that many thousands of young people, and disproportionately those being boys and young men of color who make up that 4,000 to 7,000, there is a untapped resource that exists there. And so the Newark Opportunity Youth Network stems from a youth build, Newark, which is a community-based organization.
So is it part of Youth Build, or is it an extension of Youth Build?
So it's almost as a doing business as, if you will. It is taking what Youth Build Newark has learned from 20 years of doing this work in the city and saying, how do we take what one community-based organization has learned and scale those learnings up into an actually citywide strategy? I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, Mark, how old is My Brother's Keeper?
So My Brother's Keeper originally, President Obama started in 2014 after the killing of Trayvon Martin. And it was a call to action in cities across the country. Newark and our Mayor Baraka, picked up that call to action in 2016. And so in 2016, when Newark took the charge and responded to President Obama's call to action, our brother Will Simpson, also a son of this city, was the initial leader and was doing a lot of the work and the organizing of MBK. And he's obviously now with Equal Justice USA doing just amazing work across the country. It then was under the helm of Brother Kateen, Sherrell L., who's also a son of this city. And he was doing a lot of the work with MBK as it evolved from a direct service program, very heavy on mentorship, which is what it looked like across the country. But it has evolved over the last several years, and we hope to continue this evolution into more policy and advocacy with, not for, but with boys and young men of color. And so that's how it's begun to evolve across the country, and hopefully we continue that evolution here in the city of Newark.
Can you break down that evolution? Like you said, evolution from a mentoring program into an advocacy program?
Sure. So I think originally what we saw across the country and even a little bit in Newark was a lot of folks were tying to or reaching out to My Brother's Keeper. And I was sitting at that time in the early stages as an advisory board member. A lot of folks were reaching out to MBK looking for, hey, here's my son, here's my nephew, here's this young man in my school. Can you mentor him? Can you, quote unquote, fix him? And so there was a lot of that direct service work that was happening. What folks started to see, and I think, I'll borrow a statement and a phrase that I've heard our mayor say often, which is that Newark is resource rich, but it is coordination poor. And what we were seeing were many different organizations who were doing tremendous work for, direct service and working with young people, and sometimes overlapping.
I'm sorry, Mark, say that again. Is resource rich and coordination poor?
Yes.
That's something to think about. Okay.
Yes.
I'm sorry. Okay.
No, so in some ways we had even some organizations that were all mentoring the same young man. And what we started to see that while that work is extremely important and necessary, that the lever for impact, for greater scaled impact, may have actually be and is, I believe, at the policy level. It's thinking about the policies that are impacting those boys and young men of color, whether they are in education, in healthcare, in criminal justice, in workforce development. What are the policies that have impacted those boys and young men of color? And rather than having them remain dependent on our programs for perpetual support, how do we empower them to be the assets in solving community problems rather than them being the problem to be solved? And so that is part of the evolution to saying, how do we work with these boys and young men of color to change policies that impact them directly?
So Mark, what I do remember My Brother's Keeper is first the visual. I can remember being at the ALC at the federal level, and the congressional member who with President Obama, I believe, started it, and you would see these young men show up in ties and shirts and things like. And then I remember Mayor Baraka brought a group of young men from Newark who came down to DC as well. Can you tell us, share some of the activities? What is My Brother's Keeper, doing today? What are like the daily, the short term, long term?
Sure. So the most kind of pressing, the thing that's right in front of us is actually My Brother's Keeper through OYN in partnership with the mayor's office and Equal Justice USA is getting to launch next week our Reimagining Public Safety report. It's a report that looks at the arc of public safety in our communities from pre the 67 rebellion and what public safety looks like in communities, through the rebellion, and then to date, some of the policies, some of the initiatives that are changing the way we look at even the language of policing versus public safety. One of the things that we've been able to do with that report is we've also been able to develop at MBK a teacher toolkit for that report that we've shared with multiple community-based organizations that are serving opportunity youth. And we are launching this next week, Thursday, with a student roundtable discussion where we will have community stakeholders like Linda Carter and Junius Williams and Richard Roper sitting with young people who have now gone through this report, digested this report, and being able to talk about these initiatives, these policy changes, and how it's impacting some of particularly our boys and young men of color who are most impacted by those types of policy changes. And so that I raise that kind of as a tree, if you will, of this larger forest, which is how do we at MBK continue to partner with other organizations and bring young people into the forefront so that it's their voices that are being heard. Something that's on the horizon is we are getting ready to launch a policy advisory board. We will be recruiting through the next 2 months young people, particularly high school students, particularly boys and young men of color who are interested in policy, interested in advocacy, and in partnership with the Institute for Social Justice, New Jersey Institute for Social Justice, will be taking that group of young people through an arc of leadership development. What does it mean to advocate? What are your levers in the state legislature and even locally? And preparing those young people again to be the driving voice in change in our community. And so that's the work of MBK kind of in a nutshell. It's how do we partner with organizations that are already doing tremendous work and not, to my earlier point, create a new resource, but instead coordinate with the resources that exist and make sure that young people's voices are at the forefront of that coordination.
And Mark, I just wanted to say one thing. I don't know if it's the proper time, but I don't want to forget this thought. Last week we had Principal Kafele on, and Bashir, who's a teacher in the school. And one of the things, the constant themes that came out of the conversation last week was young Black men as they were coming through the school system, not seeing teachers that look like them. Is that something that you hear when you're with these young men, that they question, why don't I see more Black particularly Black male educators?
So it's interesting. I'm not sure young people, in my experience, have lifted that question on their own. But I think when prompted, when asked, they realize and kind of do an inventory and say, you know what, I haven't had too many teachers, male teachers of color. And it's interesting because this is, I think, as we kind of start to finalize our strategic plan and look into the next 3 to 5 years of the work of MBK, this is the place where I'm hoping to be able to spearhead some work in the city. It's around how do we diversify the educator pool, particularly with the inclusion of more men of color. I, a son of this city, my first male teacher of color was not until I was a freshman in high school. That moment was a life changer for me. And if I could share a quick anecdote, I remember one of the moments that was a life changer for me was there was a movie that came out. It's a hip hop show, right? So everybody should know Higher Learning, with Omar Epps and Busta Rhymes and Ice Cube. And I remember that movie came out and Newark Multiplex at that time, all the way down.
Mr. Williams.
Wow.
It was packed. Everyone went to see it that weekend it came out. That Monday, we walked into my freshman English teacher's classroom. His name is Mark Onion. And he spent the entire class dissecting that movie and the meaning, the metaphors behind that movie, the Tyra Banks dying at the feet of Columbus, right? At the university. And I remember what he did for me was say, as young men of color, because this was an all boys school, we were at St. Benedict's, we were overwhelmingly young men of color. what he did for me in that moment was say, I know you guys all went to go watch a movie and had some fun this weekend, but we don't have the luxury of just being able to have fun and eat some popcorn. We also have to take home the message of this movie. And I can't help but wonder, would I have ever gotten that message if it wasn't for a male teacher of color from our own community? And the power of that experience for me is something I took with me when I became a teacher, when I was a school leader, and now doing this work within MBK. And we need more of our young people to be able to have Mark Onions in their life, people who are able to say, here's what it means to be a man of color in a community and to traverse and transcend circumstance. And this is how you can do so also. So that is it's a topic that's near and dear to my heart and is so needed in our community.
Well, I want you to write yourself a note to get with Principal Caffelli, because that was one of the things what did you say, Jonathan? He had a club, right? Where the club was to help young men to become educators. I can't remember the specifics of the club, but if you could, write yourself a note and try to talk to him, if you can kind of snatch him, if y'all are ever in the same room, and talk to him about that, because he had a group that was really about making sure that there would be more Black educators, male educators.
Absolutely, I will. I absolutely will. And I taught a class this summer actually called I Hate School. all young men, 22 young men ranging in ages from 14 to 18. But it was about just topics in education and talking about the purpose of education. And we looked at James Baldwin's A Talk to Teachers and talked about, this dichotomy of how the purpose of education being to free one's minds to be able to have them be able to determine for themselves what is black and white, if there is a God or there isn't a God, what is right, what is wrong. But schools perpetual putting into a box and kind of checking the box, if you will, and making folks what the school and the school system needs them to be, rather than to be the free thinkers that they should be.
Yeah, I read Baldwin's A Talk to Teachers when I was a senior in college. It's one of the reasons why I decided to teach, and it's also one of the reasons that govern how I teach.
Yes.
It's a powerful essay. And when you're teaching, like when you're dealing within these programs, what is the biggest obstacle that you have?
So I'm going to say, I'm going to assume first, and I'll preface my response by saying I'm going to assume that overwhelmingly the audience that listens to a hip hop show are people of color. Is that a fair assumption?
Fair assumption.
So
even though that's not necessarily true with hip hop, you know what I'm saying? Like,
most
hip hop artists, the majority of their audience is not Black or brown.
That is true. That is true. But since I'm talking to an audience that is probably made mostly of people of color and people from our communities, the obstacle that I think I've been diving into most recently is the obstacle that is us having gone through traditional school systems and being able to succeed in those traditional school systems and perpetuating those structures on our own people, even though it may not be good for overwhelmingly the majority of particularly boys and young men of color. When I think about my friends, my family members who were left behind, and then I make it through, I have two options. It's to say, well, something's wrong with them because they didn't make it through, but I did, and there's nothing special about me. Or something's wrong with the system that only so few made it through. I was taken back to Carter G. Woodson's The Miseducation of the Negro recently, as I was teaching that class actually over the summer. And there's a passage in there where he talks about how sometimes the most educated of us, the most educated Negroes, the most educated people of color are sometimes the most, and I'll use his language, most useless among their own people. Because they have been able to traverse and assimilate, if you will, into a structure that was not designed by them, and then perpetuate that structure on their own people. So I would argue, at least for this audience, that the variable challenge, the hurdle that I think is most pressing, and it's the one that I have to reflect on because I'm a traditionally trained educator.
Right.
Was that structure good for me, or is it good for us? And I think it's an open question that we need to grapple with.
It's the conundrum of the middle class in urban areas, because I think that the middle class who legislate make laws and they make policies and rules that reflect their own background.
Yes.
The things that worked for them.
Yes.
Not understanding that those things did not work for the majority of our people.
It's absolutely true. I'll give a quick anecdote. When I was a principal in the district, I remember being at a principal's meeting. There are maybe 70 of us in this room. And the sister who was leading it was, at the time, she was the executive director of student support services for the district. And she asked this question of a room of school leaders, majority of which were people of color. And she says, does anyone know when the system of suspending and expelling students kind of became a thing? Like, when did that actually kind of start to become actual policy? And so there were crickets and some silence, and some people threw out some ideas. And then she broke the silence with, it was when schools became integrated.
Right.
And when white teacher unions had to think of, how do we now exclude and separate these little black and brown boys and girls from our white boys and girls?
Right.
And dropping that bomb in a room full of educators and administrators of color, for us to say, wait a minute, I am perpetuating the same thing that was designed to keep me separate on my own people. You could cut the room. It was just thick. And it was an administrator, a daughter of our city, who raised her hand and says, but what else am I supposed to do? And that was the question that we needed to get to. The question was, okay, if this does, they say the first step to recovery is recognizing you have a problem.
Right.
We may first need to say, wait, we have a problem. And it's hard to do that if it worked for me. But we have to say there's a problem here, and it requires a rethinking of how we educate people of color and our communities.
Because the entire thinking behind that, right, was, and I think the entire thinking behind the perception of what we do is that there's a certain form of schooling that worked for everybody who was in that room, which is why they became principals.
Yes.
Why they graduated from high school, it's why they graduated from college. It's why we bias college education as a result of as an expected result of secondary education. We're like, if you go to high school, you got to go to college, right? Like, and we discount trades, we discount things that can make more money than teachers without going to debt, because we have a mentality or mindset that works for me.
Yeah.
And this was my journey.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't get suspended. The reason why I didn't get suspended is because I listened to the teacher. So, and we don't realize that we are not interrogating systems and understanding how to actually connect with everyone else. What is the answer to that question? Like, you're like, hey, we had to answer that question. Based on your training, based on what you do now, what is the answer to that question?
So I think part of it is going back to, Donna, what you referenced. I think we need more teachers of color in our school system. I think also, and I'm going to take it back to this idea of opportunity youth and the asset and resource that they are. Opportunity youth are young people who had the guts, the nerve, oftentimes, to say, this isn't working for me. I'm going to go seek out something else. And those young people, we rarely tap into them and say, hey, tell us around what's happening here. I'll give you some examples of the ways I've done this in the past and hope to continue to do this. When I was a school principal, and this is part of our philosophy at the Opportunity Youth Network, we never hired anyone unless young people were involved in the hiring process and the young people said, yes, hire that person. That included my teachers, administrators. It was anyone who was joining our school community. That was a crazy idea when I would share it with some of my colleagues. I remember talking once to a principal of a school who said, I guess I can take my valedictorian. And I'm going, your valedictorian represents 1% of your school. You need to take the young man who's driving you crazy, who you're trying to figure out what to do to support him. and ask him, hey, tell me what you think your teacher should look like. Tell me who you think we should put in front of you. And what that did was a couple of things. And I've seen it over the years. It allowed young people to realize that they were accountable for the education that they were receiving, everything down to the teachers who were in front of them, the content that they engaged with. It also opened up for students this idea that, you know what, this education stuff is something of interest. It's something that I like. The number of young people who I've worked with who've had those experiences who said, you know what, I want to be a guidance counselor now. I want to be a teacher now, because it opened a pathway for them and made them an asset in this work. Again, versus rather being the problem to be solved. And so I think part of how we start to answer that is asking young people.
So part of that was just include them in the actual process of education.
Absolutely.
Right. And if they're included in the decision making and some of the process, then they can see how it works and they see how it's supposed to work.
Yes. And they feel responsible for it, which is what I think we oftentimes in our communities, education is something that's done to us. We sit passively quiet in rows and receive information.
On the board, do you have a student representative on the board?
So yes, so our policy advisory board will be all students, and so that's going to be, we're looking to have anywhere from 15 to 20 young people who will be on that policy advisory board. Even till this day, there are young people in the city who I always reach out to when I'm grappling with an idea, I'm thinking about something. Sometimes when I'm vetting a partnership, I'll reach out to a young person. Do you know this person or this organization? Tell me your experience with that organization or that person. It's also cultural. Like, we don't do that. I grew up in a household where oftentimes I was told to be quiet because the adults were talking. But tapping into them and asking young people what they think, they're more than willing to share and take ownership. It's just we have not thought that way about reaching and tapping into them.
And think about that, and even from a comedic standpoint, that we always talk about Thanksgiving, the little table, and this is really ingrained that we were separate, but yeah, it's something that we have to reimagine. Really bring, like, come on over here, let me hear what you got to say, let me hear what you're thinking, and really listen, and and it makes a difference.
It does. It makes a huge difference.
Now,
when
you were talking about the, we're getting ready to wrap up, but in both programs that you deal with, you told us that one of the most difficult thing is just the mentality of the people who are older, right? Who you work with, right? What do you find is the most challenging disconnect, or is there a challenging disconnect with people who are younger, right? Like, I think that Newark and most cities educate 30% of the kids really, really well, like just incredibly well. And then, then there are like maybe the people who would be the bottom third on scores or risk of dropping out, like that we don't serve very well. Who have you had the most, what type of student is the most challenging to reach that you have to develop new strategies for, that where the traditional stuff doesn't work, the non-traditional stuff doesn't work? Where have you had to really rethink and reform new strategies that even challenge the reformist stuff that you were thinking?
So that's a big question, and I know we're running out of time. So I will go with what first came to mind. I think the young person that we've had the most difficult time serving are 17, 18, 19-year-olds who come to us having had multiple disruptions in their education, having been to many different schools, 4, 5, 6 different schools over the course of their elementary, middle, and high school career, and are struggling readers, are reading at a 3rd grade, 4th grade level. And so you have a very short window of time, because they're 18, 19, In some instances, they may be a parent already. They're trying to get to work. They have a child to feed, a family to take care of, and have a huge skills gap. And it is, how do we accelerate that young person's academic achievement in a very short window so that they are able to go and be able to take care of themselves, their families, and ultimately their community.
Because what you're pointing out isn't an intellectual gap, but a skills gap.
It is a skills gap, yes.
And one of the things that I learned when I first started teaching, actually I was a teacher at Seton Hall Upward Bound, and I had a student who was not able to read, who was going into his senior year, and he had an incredible vocabulary.
Yeah.
He had massive vocabulary.
Yeah.
But he couldn't read.
Yeah.
I'm going to leave that to you. Finish your thoughts on that.
Yeah, no. So in closing that skills gap, as you said, and accelerating the closing of that skill gap, I think it's a combination of two things. It's being very clear on what the strengths are that the young person has. And to your point, a very strong vocabulary, the ability, sometimes those students are able to think in a way that it's deeper, and they've compensated in some ways that puts them ahead of the students who have better reading ability or skills.
Right.
How do you leverage their strengths so that you can fill the gaps that they have? But it requires identifying those gaps, targeting them, and moving those specific skills, leveraging content that is relevant and important for the immediate. Talking to an 18 or 19-year-old about 3, 4, 5 years from now who has tremendous skills gaps, they can't see the light at the end of that tunnel.
Right.
And you just said something that you're teaching a child adult, like this is, that's like, whoa, that right there.
Yeah.
Ooh,
it's difficult. It's difficult.
And you find that is not, is that, how large of a problem is that? How large of how many students do we have who are 17, 18, who are interested in doing something, but just have a massive skills gap from tons of breaks in their education?
That number is large. We saw at OYN, upwards of about 4,700 applications over the course of multiple years, 2016.
I'm sorry, you said 4,700?
Yes. Mostly from Newark.
4,700.
Yes. And we were able to serve only a drop in that proverbial bucket of which was about 700 students because of the number of seats that we had. And there are other community-based organizations who are doing tremendous work with this population as well, whether it's Alta Rican Leaders for Life, or it's Kenya Midi at the Newark Street Academy, and Greg and Wendy at La Casa de Don Pedro, and Jackie at UCC. I mean, there are many community-based organizations that are doing this hard work with Opportunity Youth. It's not just OYN, and these are organizations that in many ways are worked with and are part of the OYN network. But that number is a large. It's a large number of young people. The data typically has shown us that our average reading level amongst these young people is about 6th grade. These are, again, and our average age, our bell curve is 17 turning 18. And so we have a large number of 17 and 18-year-olds coming to us who are reading at a 5th or 6th grade level. And those are just the averages.
And you know what, Mark, and probably one of the easiest solution is just getting young people to read. Just give them books that they find interest, and that will help improve their reading. Are we doing any partnerships where there's an account where they can go down and source of knowledge and spend $20 a month and go pick 2 or 3 books up and just do something so you can just get something in your hand that you like to read? And because I can remember required reading when I was in high school, and I think it was just I had not had enough life experience to appreciate, because they were actually great books, but I didn't have the life experience to appreciate it. But I think, my mother made me be an avid reader. I always had to have a book in my hand. Yeah. And, we have to, find a way to get young people to just, what is it they like to read, and make sure, whether, I know we had a teacher talk about the comic books. It was on we have to figure out, just give them something that they like to read and start from there. You know, 'cause
Agreed.
just
Agreed. The students, our young people don't need help thinking. They've, in many ways, the level of thinking they're able to do goes far beyond. I mean, it's one of the most marketable skills that they have. It's spending time actually grappling and reading the text. And unfortunately, they have often been times diagnosed with a disability. In my experience as a trained, particularly literacy teacher, what's created the gap is a lack of exposure to reading. They just have not spent time reading.
Right.
There's no, the phonemic awareness is there, but they're grappling with words. You know, the English language is one of the only languages that I know that says to you, here's the book, right, of all the rules, and it's maybe 100 pages long. But then says, here's the book of all the times those rules are broken, and it's like 500 pages long. Right? It requires an access and a fluency and a muscle and of reading. And so if they're not reading, both in school, and the most powerful tool, you mentioned it, was having someone read to them at home from when they're still in Pampers. If that's not happening, we end up having to close that gap. And the only way to do it is with consistent practice and access to books and reading.
I remember, Mark, real quick. I know we got to finish, Jonathan, but the coldest winter ever. The coldest winter ever. And just wanted to take that book, get a group of students, let's read it, let's turn it into a stage play. You know, it was just something that it was just so visual, the reading and stuff like that. So I don't know. We'll have to have you back on and we'll talk about that.
Ask me a question. You can ask me a question.
And we got to. So tell me, this is a hip hop political show. What hip hop artist and or group are you listening to or song these days? Or your favorite
hip hop artist, individual, group, who you're listening to? Any of that?
Oh man, there's so many. So I was at the KRS-One Big Daddy Kane versus this past weekend, and so
you were there.
I was there. Yeah.
Okay, way to flex. Like I was in the I was right up front.
Yeah, and you would break dance and spit it on your head and everything. Go ahead.
So I've had KRS-One, the teacher, on heavy rotation for many days as of late. But I love Tribe Called Quest. I love Wu-Tang. I can't leave them. Nas and Jay-Z are always on heavy rotation. So I love hip hop. It's powerful and it speaks to my soul.
Okay. All
right. Thank you so much.
I know our DJs in the background like, oh yeah, okay. Well, thanks, Mark. We have to have you back on again. And
we definitely have to have you back on again. We have to have some more conversations. You know, I'm a debate coach. I'd love to have some conversations with you about the intersection of what I teach and what you do. So I think that I think what you do is really important, and the numbers that you talk about, that there's something. So. We'll definitely have to have you back on our show. Let's continue to have some dialogue, and we'll talk to you soon.
Take care.
Thank you.
All right, that is All Politics Are Local, America's number one political hip hop radio talk show. We have our guest on right now. We have activist Sabine Philippe-Entrevue.
Listen to your French accent. Go ahead, Jonathan.
I don't know. I think I probably butchered it. But we have an activist,
Brother Dumas. Yeah, where's he at?
And we also have Haitian writer Dieury Dumas here as well. And did I say your names correctly? Please correct me.
Yes.
All right. Well, it is nice having you back. This is more like a follow-up show. There's stuff that happens in Haiti, and we wanted to have you back on because you were talking a lot before about the situation. You were giving us some background on the history and some of the activism, what was involved in that. We see that now it seems like there's a level of danger that is maybe even greater now because with 12 people, with Americans kidnapped, that seems to always be a precursor for, large-scale American military intervention. When I looked at the situation, it was like, 12 Americans were kidnapped. I'm thinking, that's like a precursor to invasion. I think about what happened in Grenada. I think what happened in Dominican Republic in the 60s. And it seems like it might be an excuse. What do you think about what's going on now in this current situation?
Let's just jump right in. That's right. Yes. You want to start, Sabine,
You
or
got it.
Professor Philippe? You want to start, or Brother Dumas? Who wants to start?
Ladies first this time.
This
Well,
time.
thank you. Okay, thank you. Well, hello, everyone. Hello, it's just a pleasure to be here again on this platform to talk to you. And thank you so much in the interest you're taking in Haiti and trying to make people know about the situation and also trying to find solutions to help Haiti out of this grave impasse. So, yes, as you said, the situation is getting even worse. And with the kidnapping of 16 Americans and 1 Canadian, now we are talking any, like you mentioned, any excuse for intervention in Haiti. However, we are very sorry that people are being kidnapped, and we are very sorry that there is not a solution to the problems of Haiti. However, I want to mention one thing. The US is in great part responsible for this chaos in Haiti. The policies that they have are creating this anarchy in Haiti. The fact that people want to leave Haiti so that they can come abroad or to other countries to have a better situation. I think that it is time for everyone to think about what some other strategies can be used in order to help Haiti out of this impasse. In addition, everyone is talking about it now. Even some very high-ranked official from the State Department. We have journalists, we have scholars, we have very high-profile Americans, all talking about the same thing. And the same thing is those abusive practices that have been imposed on Haiti for decades, if not centuries. So let's not think of short-term solutions. Yes, sending the troops to get these people. Is that a long-term solution? What are we going to do about those weapons coming from the United States of America? Why not having a surveillance mechanism in place right on the in the, I won't say borders, but at least somewhere not too far from the shores of Haiti? Why not thinking about justice and bringing people to justice? And it looks like a cinema to me because the US embassy in Haiti has all the tools and all the intelligence to know what really is going on with those gangs. They can, in a matter of 2 hours, like I heard it on, I believe it was Jack Brewer's show on CNN. He said that in 2 hours, the troops can clean up all gangs in Haiti. And this is not a lie. 10 Marines can clean up this mess in Haiti. Now, is there the will? Is there the intent of the US to do so? That's the big question mark.
Thank you so
Jonathan,
much.
wait, Brother Dumas, before you go, Jonathan, you made a comment and you're muted,
I was
Jonathan.
muted. Okay,
Yeah.
so yeah.
I'm sorry, Brother Dumas.
This was a comment made last time that American force could actually solve the problem that was there in a short amount of time. And I brought back even then that if American forces actually went into Haiti in forceful ways, like I know they're there, but if they launched full-on attacks, we killed innocent people in Afghanistan leaving, right? And we did it all the time while we were there. There, we call it collateral damage. The collateral, quote, innocent people who would be killed probably is pretty massive, given just the history of when the United States goes in hot. Dieury Dumas, what do you think about that? What do you think about the United States and the potential of military intervention?
Well, thanks for having us again. This is with great sadness that we are witnessing the kidnapping of those missionaries, 17. And just like Sabine just said, it's just like a movie. This is unbelievable. Haiti has been into this chaos for like 5 or 7 years, and no American have been kidnapped, like a group of missionaries. This is very, this is a crazy story for us. It's like a nightmare. And I want to shout out for Anaya and 5 other Haitian that are being, that they were arrested because they were protesting in Brooklyn. They arrest them and they are the court day. And next Friday, they're going to have another court day to protest the deportation. Matter of fact, this morning, I was in a protest in Newark in front of the federal building, where Brother Wilson gave a big speech about exactly what is going on. We had so many African American, African descent, and Spanish, Asian come together to the to protest against the mass deportation. To answer the question, just like we said in this interview, is that the follow-up from the last interview. We said it clearly. We need some help, or the U.S. Army to go down and clean this mess. They need to clean this mess first because they caused it in the first place. Because in Haiti, we do not have any industries that producing guns or bullets. We do not produce those kind of things. Matter of fact, there is an embargo on embargo on Haiti, where those guns are coming from. Well, the U.S. Army need to do this job because there is a lot of gangs going around. I understand your fear because in Afghanistan there was a lot of damage, a lot of collateral damage. We understand that, but just like the comment, in 2 hours the U.S. Army can clean up all those guns. Why? Because they know exactly where they are. They know who are the gang leaders, and probably they know from top to bottom who are those guys. And why they don't do the job, it's because from my point of view, they have a bigger plan for Haiti. Probably they want Haiti to descend into more chaos. They want all the people, like the good people, like the good citizens, those who are abide by the law, to leave the country, and the gangsters to run the country. That's why they put all those corrupt leaders into power. And they know exactly there's more than 30 Senate people that are doing job, and they don't say nothing about it. It's a problem when the U.S. Army goes into a place and there's a lot of collateral damage. We understand that. But from the danger those civilians are facing and the risk to go down there and to clean the mess, we think we need the U.S. Army to go down and help with this situation. First, they cause it. Secondly, they know exactly who they are and where they are, and they are the best forces to do the job. Why they don't do it yet, we don't know. And I can tell you, while we're sitting talking like that, the U.S. Army can go down and do the job. This night or tomorrow morning, they can quietly and do the job. Call the Delta Force, call some special operation team to do the job, to rescue, first of all, the missionaries. We have American children being kidnapped, women, and we know those gangs, when they put their hands on women, this is not good news. We need to make it clear to the Biden administration, they need to go down and do the job and do it with care, so we're not gonna have
when
a lot of collateral damage.
But I think when you say do it with care, I just don't know how that's possible to have an like, even in the situation where the hostages are there, right? Like, we see the movies all the time where, you know, the special forces jump in, and, you know, but realistically, like, when it's ever really tried, most of the hostages get killed. And that's just true, right? Like, when you try to deal with these rescue operations, unless if you're not going to negotiate, right? Then those operations, things go wrong. People with bullets, people are fragile, right? Like, and you have a bunch of automatic weapons and you have innocent people. That's just never a good mix. And most of the time when that happens, there are like, if the United States goes in hot, most of those people will die. And I'm not saying that I'm not even saying that they shouldn't do it. I just think that when we're talking about the United States cleaning up Haiti, I don't know how that happens without large numbers of people just getting killed in mass, because you have a lot of people with guns. And apparently, right, it's not like many of the gangs are scared of Americans. They kidnapped Americans. So they got guns. People aren't just going to lay down. And is that something, do you think that this is something that people in Haiti want to happen? Like, do you think that people in Haiti actually want the United States to intervene in the way that the United States would intervene? That would be something along the lines of, you know, Iraq, Afghanistan, Panama. Like, you could name the countries, right? Like, where the United States has intervened and done regime change.
Well, if we don't do it now, and then we wait later on, the situation gonna be more dangerous. On our last interview, there was no American being kidnapped. Now we have 17 American being kidnapped. Now, the U.S. embassy, it's in a hard zone. So what's gonna happen when they invade the U.S. embassy or they take over the French embassy? We don't know exactly where those people gonna go. And some of them are waiting for the election. Some of them are seeing themselves as elected official, as president, or people going into different part of elected official. We need to do something now so we can stop the mess, because the longer we wait, the more powerful they're gonna get. So, and then if we let this situation going into the wrong way, we're gonna have to do more casualties. We understand there are gonna be some collateral damage. We don't want that. This is why they need to send special operation. Haiti is not Afghanistan. In Afghanistan or in Iraq, you had people trained. They believe in some ideology or other stuff. We don't have that yet in Haiti. We have a bunch of kids running with guns, going into the wrong path, and then now they think they're some kind of big stuff. No, if we send enough power, they're gonna realize the game is over. If they listen to those helicopters, if they see like 5 planes with a lot of military, a lot of things, some of them, they're just gonna run away. There are gonna be some crazy guys that think, oh, I have some stuff with me, and I can do this and I can do that. But if we do it with care, with a lot of calculation, I believe there are gonna be some casualties. Yes, we understand that. But if we wait longer, there are gonna be more problem. And this is why. But yes.
So what you're saying is, in Afghanistan, the Taliban were trained by the CIA. They were trained by the Pakistanis. If you look at Iraq, if you look in Iraq, they were a military in and of themselves, also trained in part by the United States, but had their own training, so they were professionals. And in Haiti, they're not professional. You're saying they're kids with guns.
Exactly. So they have just some kind of mentality. We can do bad things. Some of them, they don't even realize the situation. And when the police take some of them, they start crying. But the police make them speak anyway. But when they got into the police custody, they're not acting like that big. But those guys from Afghanistan or Iraq. They have some mentality, they have some ideology, they believe in some greater stuff, but in Haiti, we don't have that yet. That's why we need to, yes.
But if it was so easy to deal with, why couldn't the police force deal with it in Haiti? Like the gangs seem to be like they're entracted, right? That they are entrenched, and the gangs overrun the. It doesn't seem like the military, the Haitian military or the Haitian police. It doesn't seem like they're a factor with that. Why is that power dynamic there?
Well, the police, the stronger or the guys that call himself the chief of those gang, one of the most powerful, they come from the police. He used to be a policeman. He did some bad stuff when he was the police, and then they kick him out, and then he assembled a team of gang, and then he called himself the leader of those guys, and then he's getting involved into politics. The police cannot do the job. First, because a lot of the policemen, they being by those gangs. The police cannot do the job because some of them are part of the gangs. Because those political guys, they arm the young people to do the job for them to win over the election. And the gang sometimes got more power than the police. And when the police realize that, they being led inside of those gangs. The police is probably like 70 or 60% of the police have some gang affiliation or gang relation. The police is very weak because the politic is the politic that create those gangs. Some guy want to go to election, he hire or he give gun to 5 guys. Those 5 guys help him elected, and then those 5 guys create their own gang. This is all the gang being multiplied. The police cannot do the job because of some of them are part of the gang, and the politician help them getting all those power.
So, Professor Philippe, the gangs, perhaps, and do we? I don't know if we actually know the ages of the members of the gangs, or there's a speculation. The people the persons that were kidnapped were missionaries. So I think it was just, and I don't know if this is a bad comparison, Jonathan, but I'm thinking of the situation we had in South Carolina and Mother Emanuel when, it was like he came in and he sat in Bible study. He, sat through the whole Bible study, and then, was it a situation where it was the missionaries extending themselves? So nobody expected, of course, nobody expected it, but they were pretty much opened themselves up to these gang members. And then before you know it, was it that type of situation?
To be quite honest with you, this is not how it happened. This is not the type of situation that occurred. But before I answer to this question a little further, I'd like to go back to some of the things that were being talked about with Brother Jonathan and Brother Dieury. Brother Jonathan asked, is it possible to do that without having a big amount of casualty? Well, what I would say to this is the US has the high-tech strategies that can be used in order to dismantle those gangs. They don't have to go in person. We talked about that last time. They can use those drones. They can use those unhumane devices. They can infiltrate. There's also a technology where a little thing like this can pretty much get rid of someone. You have the snipers. And like Dieury said before, these people are cowards. Once you catch them, they start crying, they shake, they want to talk, they want to tell on other, they snitch. And a lesson is to be made, And the other thing I want to say is that we cannot compare Afghanistan and Iraq. This is not what we're talking about. Haiti, all those gangs, they don't have the nuclear weapons. They don't have the warheads. They don't have, all those things that we saw in Iraq or Afghanistan. So I don't think we can really compare Haiti with those countries. Let's not mix the apple and the oranges. Okay, let's stay with what it is. It's a bunch of thugs, a bunch of corrupted police officers, if I can even call them police, a bunch of corrupted individuals that call themselves police. Like Jared said, they get paid. They get paid by politicians. They get paid by gang members. Where do those gangs get all those uniforms?
Well, I mean, the Taliban didn't have sophisticated weaponry. They had pickup trucks and guns and a lot of organization. Many people compared them to gangs, and there were crime networks, right? Like in terms of what they did, their levels of sophistication weren't as intense as you might make it seem. The only reason why I'm saying that is the way in which, like, I have never known the United States to ever go into a country in a way that did not produce lots of bodies. Now, that might be a first, right? Like, I'm talking about Panama. I'm talking about, like, anytime the United States goes in for some level of regime change, it's ugly. And is this what people on the ground in Haiti are calling for? Are people
Yes.
who are in Haiti, they want the United States to come in hot and, like, just basically change the country?
I'm not sure if they want the United States per se. What they want is a cooperation of international forces that could come in a partnership with if the police was not corrupted, but could be a partnership. But because we know those guys are weak, we know they're corrupted, and we're not sure who will be part of this cooperation. So it falls under the responsibility of the US at this point, with their technology and their intelligence, to help resolve this issue. Because, like we said before, the US Embassy knows all of them. They know exactly all of their moves. They know where to find them, and they know how to disarm them. They did it before in the past. They went and disarmed gangs in Cité Soleil. And those guys ran when they saw the Americans coming. They just ran away and left the weapons on the floor. We can do it again.
When you're talking about drone strikes, like, drone strikes are notorious for killing innocent people. Like, again, the last strikes that we had in Afghanistan, before we left, we had drone strikes and we killed an innocent family that we're paying reparations to. So what are the people, like, what are people on the ground demanding from the United States? And is it military intervention in the way that are people on the ground saying we want drone strikes, we want the US military to take out the police and the gangs? Are there other people on side trying to make this change, or is the intervention going to have to happen from outside?
We think the intervention on site, they have no possibilities. Okay, it's zero, none whatsoever. This is going to have to come from outside, unfortunately. The way things are going in Haiti, nobody's living in Haiti. Everybody lives in fears. Everybody, nothing is working, no business, no school, nothing. This afternoon, we heard some hospitals, because of the fact that those gangs took the streets and there's no fuel being delivered. Now people are dying in the hospital because they cannot find oxygen tanks. And they're dying because the hospitals don't have any electricity. They don't have fuel to run the generators and things like that. We just got this complaint today, and something has to give in. I mean, you cannot continue to have a country 90 minutes away from your shore to be in this situation, especially when you are partly responsible for what happened in Haiti, with your policies, with the way you support dictators and bad leaders, and you put in power drug dealers, you put in power incompetent, immoral people that are willing to do whatever you want for whatever interest you have in Haiti. And we talk about that already. It should be a win-win situation. We have competent people in the diaspora, in the Haitian diaspora, around the world. And also in the US, mainly, they can go and make a big difference in Haiti. Why don't they talk to these people? No, they want to talk to corrupted people with dossier so that they can say, hey, you have to sign this or you have to do this for us. Otherwise, we'll put your business on the street and we'll have the DEA or the FBI or the Interpol come and arrest you. No, can't do this anymore. You got to respect Haiti's sovereignty. You have to respect the call and the desire and the will of the people of Haiti who want to have their own leaders elected by themselves based on their culture. Don't try to come impose democracy in Haiti. Haiti was not ready for democracy. You need a transition between dictatorship and democracy. People take democracy for anarchy. And look what we have today. So we need to look at those foreign policies against Haiti. I would not say foreign policies toward Haiti. They're against Haiti because for the past 35 years, we've seen what the US mainly has done in Haiti. And that needs to stop, and it needs to stop now. They cannot even take care of their own people in the US, their own African-American brothers and sisters that we have that are always dying under the gun of those racist people. And you're going to pretend that you're going to help a predominantly Black nation? Let's think about this for a minute. How are you going to help Black people in Haiti, whereas your own people here are being mistreated?
But I think that goes to what I was saying, right? Like, you're looking at the United States intervening to help Haiti when the United States has a history of supporting people who are corrupt. And even when it intervenes in other places, it intervenes in a way that kills a lot of innocent people. How does U.S. intervention take into account what we already know about the U.S., right? When you said, how can the U.S. help Haiti when they can't even help African Americans? Reminded me of a news commentator right when the United States was about to invade Iraq for the first time. She was like, I don't know how a bunch of 18 or 19-year-olds are going to police Iraq when they can't police South Central. And she said that right at the beginning, right before he went in, right before all the innocent people were killed, right before all of that. She was like, that's a lot to ask for a military organization when we can't even do that with our own police organization here in South Central LA.
Well,
how are you asking that?
Well, one thing
you were saying.
Yes, one thing I want to add. We're not asking for a regime change. It's just only a group of people that doing bad stuff. And just like I said, if the more time we take to solve this problem, it's gonna require more power, more force to bring those people to calm. Those guys just like a cancer. If you do not treat it, you take longer to go to see your doctor or to start a treatment. It's gonna be harder to resolve the problem. Remember, last time we did not have those 17 missionaries being kidnapped. Now we have those in our hands to rescue them, and this is a very bad situation. Those guys, they're looking for the money because they ask $1 million for each person. That means $17 million. And the government and the Biden administration said we're not gonna give any money. So we are looking in some a military intervention no matter what. But if we do not take time to solve this problem, we're gonna have a bigger problem into our hand. This is what is going on. Asian people, so we free ourselves from the French, and we all can agree they was never happy about that. And no politician nation will agree with the American government to do everything the US want them to do. So they realized that. They said, we're gonna put corrupt politicians into power so we can use them as puppet. And now they said, we're gonna go farther than that. We're gonna put gang into power. That's exactly what's going on. The longer they wait to do something about it, the more time that tell us they want not only corrupt people to govern Haiti, but they want gang now to govern Haiti, so they can tell them more what to do, because those guys, they're gonna take over the government. They just the director of the national police just resigned because on October 17, the prime minister wanted to go in some place for a big celebration. They could not go. The prime minister was there on his way to go. The police chief was there with him, but they could not go there because the gang are getting so much power each day. That's the problem. So what they want to do, the more we wait to do something about it, it's the people who want the country to go down and won by gang, not co-op politician. Martelly was a co-op politician. Lama and all those guys, Jovenel was a co-op politician, but they still were some citizen politician, co-op politician. But now we are in a risk having real gang members wanting a country that is like very close to the US. That's not good news for all those countries that said we want democracy, we want peace and stability in the hemisphere. And I understand your concern again with military organization. The military organization, they're gonna do what they tell them to do. If they come sit with LHADHAN, with other ancient organizations, you said, listen, we're not gonna listen to those politicians, they wanna do bad stuff. We want to bring you in and to consult with you to direct those guys on the ground. I myself can tell them I live in this place. I know where to go left, where to go right, and where you can find those guys. Or call those people into the ground, and then we're gonna sit in the situation room. We're gonna tell them and direct them, and they have the expertise. They have the know-how. The Delta Force guy, the SWAT team, any kind of special force can go ahead quietly and do the job. Will they find some resistance? We understand that. We understand your concern about casualties. We understand that also. But now we're not gonna let those military going by themselves. We're gonna sit down with them and try to tell them exactly where the thing is and exactly where to do the job.
Well, Brother Dumas and Professor Philippe, we have a baby, an 8-month-old baby there, and I just, I can't even imagine. And I don't even, and it just saddens me that you are back here under these conditions. That we're here talking about this type of situation. That it's just, I don't know. But what I ask is that that we all stay prayerful, that we keep I don't know. Because I just want the best, and I want that baby to come back and 50 years from now reflect when he was a part of this this situation, and it's sad, but as we are over time, and as we close out, I do want to be able to give Professor Dumas and Brother Dumas and Professor Philippe, we want you guys to have the last words, and if you could just be very brief, because we just have one more segment and we're over time.
Yes, this is very sad, what has happened to the group of missionaries that were in Haiti doing good deeds. But we want to tell the world, this is not what Haitians are all about. We are not gangsters. We're not criminals. We are just victims of what the United States of America has done to Haiti for the past 100 to 200 years. And we want them to correct those deficiencies and to have better foreign policies toward Haiti. And may God protect these people in the hand of criminals, because we heard that he will kill them if he doesn't get the money.
And Brother Dumas?
Well, I really cannot find words because I myself I'm living in fear of some very bad news because I have a lot of families living down there, and this is not a good situation. Well, I'm very saddened, and I'm living in fear from some bad news, devastating news from my family. We This is a bad situation, and one thing we should understand: if we do not solve this problem now, we're gonna have a bigger one. I don't know what is the American plan. I don't know whose crazy plan is that to replace corrupt politician with gang. Remember what I told you? They want to replace corrupt politician with real gang members to govern Haiti. That's their bad plan, and I'm requesting your support to tell those people to stop these crazy plans because this is not Haiti. We are not known to kill people, to kidnap people. This is not Haiti. But somebody have a plan to let Haiti going down into chaos. So they want the land, they want the resources to do their job, and we not gonna take it. So thank you so much, and we're gonna speak another time. So keep those missionaries in our prayers. Thank you.
Yes,
Thank
and
you.
we'll definitely have to have you back on as more updates and more things happen. All right, thank you. All right, and that is the our section of All Politics Are Local, America's number one political hip hop radio talk show. We are on with DJ Rhino. We're on to the next part, and that is DJ Rhino and the state of hip hop. DJ Rhino, man, what's up? How are you?
Peace. What's going on, fellas? What's going on, people?
How are you?
What's up, Donna?
Yeah, what's that? Let me see that t-shirt. What's it? What we got?
KRS-One.
Oh, okay. All right. Number one.
All right. So, first and foremost, before I even go into it, just because that was a heavy segment we were just coming out of. So, from a hip hop perspective, I want to say big ups and respects to the Fugees and every single hip hop artist and musician with Haitian blood and Haitian background that speaks on the struggle of Haiti. You know what I'm saying? I want to say that first and foremost. And also I want to say
Right on. Has Wyclef said anything? Have you heard? Has Wyclef spoken?
I haven't heard anything. I do believe he's done some work as far as just playing some music and doing stuff. I guess like fundraisers and stuff like that. He's been doing for the cause for Haiti. So I know about that. He's been doing that though. But Wednesday, I want to say Wednesday. Happy born, Snoop D-O-double-G. Big Snoop had his born day on Wednesday. Happy born to the dog. Also today, I don't know if any of you guys remember the hip hop group Black Sheep. They were the ones that brought you The Choice Is Yours. You can get with this or you can get with that.
Engine number 9 on the New York Transit line. If my train falls off the track, pick it up.
Yeah, so today marks the anniversary of that debut album where that song was on. Today marks what's that? 20 years, I believe.
Well, more than that.
Yeah, it's crazy, man. That album came out. I remember I used to get off work and throw that in my Walkman immediately, man, listening to Black Sheep's album, Wolf in Sheep's Clothing. That was the name of the album. And they had Choice Is Yours on there. They had Flavor, not Flavor in Your Ear, I'm about to say Flavor to Savor. The Flavor of the Month. That was the name of the song. Flavor of the Month by Black Sheep, man. And they were part of the Native Tongues family. You know what I'm saying? Q-Tip and Tribe Called Quest, Jungle Brothers, Queen Latifah, Monie Love, and everybody. De La Soul, they were part of that whole family. So big ups to Drez and Mr. Long of Black Sheep. Also
30 years. been 30
30
years.
years. 30 years. That's right.
30 years. Yeah, I
30 years.
remember that was more like college, just graduating kind of. Yeah, that whole because
Yeah,
that's
that was
like
that time.
engine. No,
Yeah. Because I was like
everybody
20,
would explode in that part of the song.
Yeah, it was crazy, and the video was dope too. The video was mad dope. Also want to say big ups to Chuck D for Mr. Chuck. He put out his debut solo album. This is the first time we ever heard from Chuck D by himself, without Flavor Flav or Griff or Terminator X or S1Ws or anybody like that. It was just Chuck, and he went under the name Mr. Chuck. And he had put out, it was called The Autobiography of Mr. Chuck. And that was his debut album. And that also came out this year, back in 96.
Oh, wow.
That came out. Yeah. So big ups to Chuck D of Public Enemy. But yeah, so the shirt, KRS-One. I got KRS-One on the shirt today. The verses, I don't know if any of y'all got to see the verses, but if anybody out there watching right now, if y'all saw the verses, y'all know what time it is. Big Daddy Kane versus KRS-One. It was huge. It was huge. It was super huge. One of the reasons why it was so huge was because, as far as hip hop, because in R&B we had Patti LaBelle and versus Gladys Knight. We had Earth, Wind and Fire versus Isley Brothers. But for hip hop, this was probably the furthest back we've gone so far as hip hop artists. You know what I'm saying? Before this, we had RZA and Primo. That was like early 90s. But to go back to KRS-One and Big Daddy Kane, we're talking like 86, 87.
Right.
1987, really. So to see two iconic hip hop artists from that time come together on this verses was crazy. It was beautiful. There was all kinds of talk. Who people thought who won or whatever. But for hip hop, of course, we always say hip hop won because we got to see two iconic artists get on that stage and rock some of their biggest classics. You know what I mean? We're talking about Big Daddy Kane from Brooklyn and KRS-One from Boogie Down Productions in South Bronx. It was crazy. Me personally, and I was born in Brooklyn. Big Daddy Kane, it was a huge influence for me. The thing about Big Daddy Kane, and I may have mentioned this before in the last show, was that Big Daddy Kane was known for attacking fast tempos. You know what I mean? He came out with Raw. Raw was up tempo. Then Set It Off was faster than Raw. And then he put out Wrath of Kane, which was faster than all of that. And it was like, I remember when Wrath of Kane first dropped, I was laughing. I actually was rolling laughing because of the fact that how fast it was. And it was like, damn, he's just not going to stop. It's just going to get faster and faster and faster. When does it stop? So Kane was the king of the up-tempo tracks. Now, again, Chuck D from Public Enemy, Rakim, they were also known for doing the fast tempo songs at that time. But Kane was the king in that era. Kane was the king of up-tempo beats. So at the verses, Kane definitely rocked all his classics. He came out to the very first song that he came out on, which was Just Rhyming with Biz. So he gave a big salute and shout out to Biz Markie on the first song, Just Rhyming with Biz, and he did his classic verse from that song. And then he just went in, man, and him and KRS-One just went back and forth with the classics. KRS-One started right off the bat with Criminal Minded. As soon as he came out, he started off with the hook. Boogie Down Productions will always get paid. That he started with that, and the crowd erupted, man. So through the entire battle, and it wasn't a battle, but through the entire verses, people were up for both of them, man. I was digging both of them. Kane did his thing. One thing I could say about Kane also is that Kane was flawless. Like Kane didn't stop. One thing I could say, like KRS, KRS had a lot of energy. He had big energy, which is why I kind of gave it to KRS overall in the end. I gave it to KRS-One because his energy was just so big. His songs were so big, the classics were so big, but his energy was big. But the thing about KRS, and I noticed a lot of other people were mentioning it, that KRS was, he let the audience, he put the mic towards the audience to let them finish a lot of his rhymes, say a lot of his lyrics. So, we're not getting to hear KRS say his stuff. And then when he was saying his stuff, he was kind of like he was in the moment. So we just kind of like throwing the words out there. He was doing a lot of the reggae chanting in lyrics that he normally doesn't do the reggae chant. He was doing reggae chanting. So, we kind of wanted to hear more of KRS doing the rhymes as just, with his regular MC voice, you know what I'm saying? And we wanted to hear him do the rhymes, because when you listen to Big Daddy Kane wasn't giving it a whole lot to the audience to say. Big Daddy Kane was saying his rhymes, and he was flawless, on point. He even jumped down off stage and got into the crowd to do his lyrics. I think when he did I Get the Job Done, he got off stage and went into the crowd to do his thing. So Kane, he's still got his energy. He's still in good shape. He had Scrap Lover come on stage with him. I don't know where School was, but Scrap Lover came out there and they did a couple of moves that that they're known for doing. But it was a crazy versus. KRS-One, he brought out Das Effects, he brought out Mad Lion. Big Daddy Kane brought out Nice and Smooth. KRS also brought out Buckshot Shorty from Boot Camp Click. So it was a lot of it was a lot of features and whatnot. Boot Camp, Buckshot, he went on stage. Matter of fact, everybody that went on stage for KRS-One, they also gave love to Big Daddy Kane. Like, Buckshot made sure he went over there and gave love to Big Daddy Kane, even though he came out for KRS-One. Same thing with that Das Effects. They went over there and they gave love to Big Daddy Kane, because they just wanted to show that, we love both of y'all. You know what I'm saying? We're not trying to put one against the other. You know what I'm saying? We love both of y'all, and we're gonna show that love. So it was a good experience, man. It was a great experience. KRS, he ended the whole thing with some new freestyle or new verse that he has, where he got Slick Rick on the hook saying knock him out the box, Chris. Knock him out, Chris. That was a line that was originally for Slick Rick on one of Slick Rick's old jams. But yeah, and then KRS came out and he just it was like he ended the whole show with this freestyle, because there was no sign off. You know what I mean? And once he finished this, it was like Big Daddy Kane walked off. Everybody walked off. They started showing the sponsors and the credits and all of that, and it was just over. And it was like they just ended it after KRS did what he did. So I mean, you gotta really big ups KRS. You know what I'm saying? Also, KRS also brought up Hakeem Green. He also shouted out Ras Baraka and Do It All on stage when he did it, which was really huge, because we're talking about verses, and for him to go on verses, which is global, and to go out there and really shout. And he's not from Jersey. I mean, KRS has lived in Jersey, but I don't even think he's lived in Newark. You know what I'm saying? But he shouted out Ras J. Baraka. He made sure he shouted out Ras J. Baraka. He made sure he shouted out Do It All and what he's doing politically. You know what I'm saying? So big ups to Hakeem Green and KRS-One for doing that, because that was huge to see KRS-One shout out Ras Baraka on the Versus stage, on the Versus platform. That was huge. You know what I mean? But just overall, man, it was a good versus, man. It was iconic. It was classic. Like I said, Big Daddy Kane was flawless. So I'm not saying Big Daddy Kane lost at all. He didn't lose anything. But my personal choice was KRS, just because of his energy. It was like effortless. He just went out there effortlessly and killed it. Nice. So that was my thing on the verses.
Well, what I will say, as we come to a close of another show, I'm catching up with my homework. I feel like my hip hop professor. I finally got to watch Dave Chappelle. I must have had to watch it 5 times. Okay. So we probably need to come back and talk about that.
Oh yeah, we're gonna talk about.
We got to talk about that.
Talk about Dave. Yeah.
And I almost want to have Jonathan. We got to talk about even having a discussion on that, because even the how is playing out, cancel it, and he started out this cancel culture,
Right.
and now he's on, he's right back
Well, I
into
mean, that's
cancel culture.
right.
Yeah. So we gotta
That's
talk
one thing
about
I say. Cancel culture needs to get canceled.
Well, I mean, that's what
cancel culture needs to get canceled.
Right. I mean, it really was Dave Chappelle versus cancel culture, right? And he knew it. And we'll talk about that later. But the last 20 minutes, I thought were brilliant. Because I think in the last 20 minutes,
the first 20 minutes.
Well, I mean, the last 20 minutes, I think, brought it
with
all
his
together.
friend Daphne.
Right.
Yeah.
I think it brought it all together because it's like, y'all gonna hate me, y'all gonna troll me, but y'all swung down at my friend. She killed herself, and I'm kind of pissed. I thought that the whole
she was one of y'all. Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. But no, she was like, and she wasn't one of y'all. She was one of mine.
One of mine. Right.
Right. And I think that level of humanity, kind of in a way, has to get ignored. Like you have to ignore that part. You have to ignore his critique of like that coming at people, that cancel culture, that you don't have this particular line on this particular orthodoxy, so I need to come for you. And he's like, you mad at me because you think I'm attacking groups, but you attacked this individual, and you might not have caused her death, but you clearly didn't care, and you couldn't have helped. And this is who I'm mad at. This is how this is what made me mad, right? You're mad at what I'm saying at this larger group thing. Here's what I'm mad at. How you deal with that? How do you dismiss that? How do you ignore it? Because in all the criticisms, they really can't talk about her. She has to be invisible, or she has to be like, a Clarence. She has to be either vilified or invisible. Right. You can't deal with her as a human being having a human experience, because that's the way it's crafted toward the end. So yeah, I thought it was.
And I'll tell you, I'm surprised that the Jewish community didn't come out, and I don't know that they didn't because I haven't researched it that much. But he said something in the beginning. He said because when he did the thing, he said because a black gay person knows that when they come out, they don't see this person, they just see, two Cliffords or whatever he said, they don't
basically he's saying when the police come out, they don't see the gay black person and the straight black person, they see two black people.
That's right. Yeah. So that was So we so I really like to talk about that. So we'll do that. But and Lillian, this is and I can't. I was trying to post Eddie Murphy, Lillian, but it's too many curse words in there. Lillian, you've been bad all night. So Lillian, I just shout out Lillian. She is so funny in the comment section. But I couldn't post Eddie Murphy's words. But Lillian,
that's funny.
But yes.
But
Coldest went to ever. So go ahead.
But we have reached another end to the show. And is there anything, other announcements, Don, you want to make before we leave?
No, just thank all of our guests. And again, I'll close the show and I'll send out the picture. But Mother Jean Laurie, she was a dear, a mother to us all, and just something that we all aspire to. She went down fighting. She would be at she went to Harlem Week with me, and she hung better than me. So I just love Mother Jean, and I'm gonna miss you. That's it.
And we'll end on that. All right, another week, all politics.
Tomorrow, Twitch, 3 p.m. afternoon, twitch.tv/Rhino CMZ. Check me out, 3 in the afternoon. I'll be doing my thing.
Perfect. All right, because we want to see that. All right, another week. Thank you for all of our guests that we had. We appreciate you for coming out, from the labor relations to my brother's keeper, to the guests that we had on Haiti, to all of you, to the disciples. Thank you, and see you next week.
Peace.
Don't go nowhere, Rhino. Rhino just